Take your seats. We'll make a start with this evening's meeting. Welcome to this July Cabinet meeting. We've got an awful lot to get through, a lot of important stuff, partly caused by, of course, having no meeting in August. And time constraints are such that obviously we've 16 reports to consider. We have a total of 2 hours, 27 minutes worth of speakers registered. And that's if you stick to 3 minutes. So we will be enforcing the 3 minutes in a pretty tough way. Can we ask you, I think for those that are speaking, we welcome your comments. We love to hear what you have to say, but we don't want anybody to come up and say, can I echo what the previous speaker said? Because that won't add anything. We're asking for additionality. Don't feel in any way you're letting us down if you wave past and say, my points have been made. We need to get through. And I know that Cabinet will be keeping their comments pretty concise as well. And our hope is to get through the meeting in a fairly good time tomorrow morning. Our first item, we have no apologies for absence. Do we have any declarations of interest from members of the Cabinet? Mike.
Yeah, Chair, item 13, personal and prejudicial interest. JCB, a customer of mine in my day job, completely unrelated to the item at hand, but I will leave the room anyway and not take part in any debate or vote.
Okay, thank you, Mike. That's great. Anything else from any other member? That's terrific. Okay, we have minutes of our previous meeting, which was held here on the 13th of June. Can I just check, has everybody had a chance to read those minutes? Are there any corrections we need to make or amendments proposed? No? Okay. Can I ask you to confirm that they be accepted? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. We'll sign the minutes. No other particular chair's announcements, not been notified of any urgent business. In which case, we're very glad to welcome from Scrutiny. We have some reports coming forward. I think the first one, Ian, the Modernizing system is with you to present. Over to you. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you, Jonathan. So the report is as stated. I'm sure everyone has read it, but firstly, can I just offer my thanks to Danielle, who started this while she was the chair, and all the members of the committee, because while it was a task and finish group, it was actually a whole committee task and finish group, and it was very interesting in some of the avenues that we went down. Can I also place on record my thanks, especially to all of the officers that really gave up a lot of their time, Sarah Reid, Chris Wales, and Tracy Tiff in particular. Tracy, who managed to turn our ramblings into English, which is always helpful. And of course, to Mike, who did attend on a few occasions as well. So thank you all. The recommendations, we took a lot of evidence and the report's pretty light, but we did also delve into the cybersecurity. As we're in public session, I'm not going to say anything about that other than it has been greatly improved. I'm happy to have a chat with people in private about that, but we better ensure that we don't drop our guard. The IT and our systems are things that enable cost savings and productivity and better services. And I think the view of Scrutiny is that we really need to take it a lot more seriously and invest in that backbone in order to move things forward and get to where you'd want to be as a council. So WNC spend approximately 2% of revenue. Other exemplars in local government are probably around 6%. And then when you compare that to industry, probably nearer 10% of revenue. So whilst we have this recommendation 1 that says council needs to increase the spend on ICT, I'm also fully well aware, as I said at full council, until you fix care, there'll always be other priorities. Fix care and you can fix the computers. Malcolm can throw my very words back at me. I'm well aware of that, but I do think we need to be making that point. Our second recommendation then is about the pace of transformation, and we do think that we should try and pick that up faster and go further and faster with the IT to help further and faster on the recommendation. There was a little bit of evidence that we took around the coordination of IT packages that seemed to be, there was a little bit of department has an issue, department sources a package, department tries to sort it out, and the IT central IT people seem to be an afterthought. I think Mike was clamping down on that and trying to eradicate a lot of those bad practices. But I think we need to ensure that, you know, again, we don't drop our guard. Our third recommendation is the member steering group. We would like to see that, and also I think coupled with that is that member IT needs are not forgotten, because too often I think there's a lot of things done. We need this, we need that, but members can't get it. You know, intranet versus extranet, intranet links being one of them. The fifth recommendation is about building on the resilience, and our sixth recommendation, the Cabinet has advised that more clarity is needed regarding the term architecture and timeframes. I know you're pressed for time. It's all there. I'm happy to come back to this. I'm happy again if you want to come to a scrutiny meeting and develop things further. We can take it from there.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you ever so much. Thank you to you. Thank you to Danielle. Thank you to all those involved in this piece of work. I think there's some really useful stuff in here, all of which we understand and sort of agree with. The challenge around cost, you know, you've identified quite clearly, really. When it comes to the disaggregation, we would like to disaggregate quicker, but that's cost. And it's hard to see it on the front line of services, but the comparative fully recognise the 2% versus the others. For careful consideration, but Mike, do you want to make any initial points at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, I thank everybody, Ian, for their work on this. It's much appreciated. It's always worth saying that this is not going to be more than happy to come to a scrutiny or look at this again in the future, because this is going to be a piece of work that never actually ends. We will never get to a finish point at this stage, because whenever we get to that point where we think, oh, that's exactly where we want it to be, the world will have moved on and technology will have changed and we'll need to move again. So in terms of departments going it alone, that's one of the big things that we don't want to see. There's still, whilst we have new policies and procedures in place to stop that, there is still a little bit of a culture and practice that's happening. So we need to constantly be aware of that. In terms of architecture, it's a cloud-first strategy. It's not a cloud-only strategy. It's a cloud-first strategy. And you'll be hearing more on that as and when things come up. In terms of further and faster, the key point I think is it's crucial that we link into contracts as they come to end, where there's an optimum point to change a contract. And a really good example, which I can now announce tonight, is around the new telephony system. So we've signed for the new telephony system now, and I can tell you that the person we've signed with is Vodafone. And 20 years ago, who would have thought that a landline phone system from the council being awarded to a Vodafone? So I think that shows you just exactly what direction we're headed in terms of that integration and the wider getting out there piece. In terms of member IT needs, happy to look at workshops and things moving forwards. In terms of the new rollout of the new hardware, that's already actually started. We're about 80% through phase 1. So an awful lot of staff have had new laptops already. Members are next, and I do have 2 volunteers in mind who will I'll be in touch with in due course to trial the new equipment. The new equipment that members will be getting, of course, makes it easier to have paperless meetings, which I'll obviously have been advocating for a while. That's about it for now, Chair, but happy to come to a future meeting and work on this as we move forward.
Yeah, brilliant. So we're absolutely along a journey here, aren't we? Which will continue. Does anybody else want to just chip in any last comments on this? No? Ian, thanks once again, and thanks to everybody who took part in that. Secondly, from scrutiny, we're glad to welcome Andrew Grant. This is the housing allocation scheme. And after Andrew's spoken, we have one further speaker, Councillor Sally Beardsworth. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jonathan. I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to go through a few points, if I may, and then obviously, as the item is also on the agenda tonight at item 15, so it is quite opportune. So this report sets out the recommendations by the Children's Education Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee relating from pre-decision scrutiny of the proposed housing allocation scheme to the committee at its meeting on the 19th of June. The committee was able to consider an overview of key elements of the proposed scheme. The committee then had a very constructive discussion with the cabinet member, Adam Brown, and service and leisure and service managers. The committee's recommendations were intended to help strengthen the proposed scheme and to support effective implementation of it. The committee's specific recommendations and the thinking behind them are as follows. The Cabinet to agree that the proposed non-qualifying criteria for the new West Northamptonshire housing allocation scheme should not bar persons who have housing-related debt but who are making reasonable efforts to pay it back. The committee thought if the non-qualifying criteria relating to debt were applied in a rigid way that took no account of individual circumstances, it could exclude people from the scheme who most needed help, given that debt could be connected with other difficulties that a person was dealing with in their life. The second point was the Cabinet to agree that the proposed non-qualifying criteria of the West Northamptonshire Housing Allocation Scheme should deal robustly with persons who had damaged social rented housing let to them in the past. The committee thought that tenants whose irresponsibility damaged their existing homes and then expected to be provided with another demonstrated a lack of respect towards the community and should be treated robustly within the scheme. The third point was the Cabinet to agree that an applicant who had at least one dependent child and is living in accommodation where the facilities are shared with others outside their own household should be placed in Band B, not Band C, of the proposed bands for assessing housing need within the new West Northamptonshire Housing Allocation Scheme. The committee thought that the higher priority within the proposed bands for assessing housing need should be given to applicants in this situation. Given the potential risk to a child using bathroom or kitchen facilities shared with adults outside of their own household. The fourth one was the Cabinet to agree that the proposed bands for assessing housing need within the new West Northamptonshire Housing Allocation Scheme should include provision for an applicant who has a dependent child under 16 years old who is subject to a child protection plan. The committee thought it would be helpful for the proposed bands for assessing housing need to include specific provision for scenarios and additional needs that could be associated with safeguarding cases. The next one was the Cabinet to agree that the clear information regarding the affordability of properties should be made available to applicants at an early stage in the bidding process within the new West Northamptonshire Housing Allocation Scheme, ideally including an affordability calculator tool. The committee the new scheme should provide as clear as possible information about the affordability of properties to avoid the unhelpful scenario in which applicants think they have made a successful bid but are then turned down following a financial assessment. And finally, the Cabinet to agree that no go-live date for the new West Northamptonshire Housing Allocation Scheme should be scheduled for after the 1st of April 2024 to mitigate risks that could result from coinciding with the date when the council tax bills are issued. The committee thought that launching the new scheme on the same date that the council tax bills are set out would add to the risks involved, including of negative customers' perceptions. I'm delighted to say, Chairman, that there are a number of recommendations in the report, which I think Councillor Brown has certainly indicated may well feature, but at the moment the last item isn't covered, so we look forward to Adam's thing. I would like to thank Adam and the officers for an hour and 25 minutes of a really good discussion, and I'm delighted to tell you under the new scrutiny thing we had no PowerPoint presentations, and it really was an excellent meeting. Thank you.
Well done, Andrew, that's fantastic. Now, I know that you wanted to comment, Adam. Do you want to comment now while we've got Andrew here, or should we take Sally to speak first? Yeah. Has he? Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you, Sally. Appreciate you doing that. Adam, you wanted to come in and comment there?
Thank you, Chairman. When I turned up to the scrutiny meeting, my worst nightmare was that we'd end up with a huge list of recommendations for certain qualifying criteria to move from band D, C, B up to the emergency banding. I'm delighted that we didn't get that. Instead, what we got was a really robust, thorough, considered examination of the policy and some excellent recommendations coming forward. So I appreciated the discussion at scrutiny. I think it's really added to the document that will go out for consultation, subject to cabinet approval later in this meeting. We have recommendations before us, Chairman, as part of this report. My proposal to cabinet would be that we accept recommendations A through to E, but that we do not accept recommendation F, which is that the go live date be scheduled for after the 1st of April 24. There is a legal impediment to accepting that recommendation. The structural changes order that created West Northamptonshire Council required us to have the new housing allocation scheme implemented by the 1st of April. And I know that were we to bring forward the implementation of the scheme substantially in order to try and mitigate the issue that Councillor Grant and his committee are anticipating, then that in itself would be there would cause some practical difficulties in bringing through the scheme in a responsible and thorough manner. So my recommendation to committee, therefore, is that we accept recommendations A through to E, but that we do not accept recommendation F.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, I mean, there's a concrete reason there, isn't there? But obviously all the others, fantastic recommendations and another great piece of work. So once again, thank you to you, Andrew, and to all involved.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Adam. Thank you for the explanation. I think that makes sense. And just finally, which I didn't say earlier, but thanks to all the committee members. It was a very, very good interactive session with everybody participating. So a great result for scrutiny. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, Cabinet, my mistake, we had a separate set of recommendations on these. Let's take them separately. The first one, which Ian presented, so we know is an ongoing dialogue. The recommendation there is recommended to Cabinet that it considers the recommendations of the task and finish group. So I just ask you to confirm your agreement. Is that agreed? Agreed, thank you. And then on the second one, we've specifically then accepted the first 5 of the recommendations and not the last one because of that timing issue. Can I ask you to confirm your agreement to recommendations A to E? Is that agreed? Fantastic, thank you very much. That's terrific. Excellent, excellent to be working so well with scrutiny. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 7. We're over to Malcolm. Provisional outturn report. This is on the revenue, first of all. Malcolm, over to you, followed by which we've a couple of speakers. We've got Councillor Holland-Delamere and Councillor Harris. Malcolm.
Yeah, fine, thank you, Chair. Well, the story of the year is quite clear. The first, we're talking about last financial year, of course, for those that are not familiar with this. And we're going to end up with last financial year as an overspend of £302,000. Which bear in mind the scale of the budget is really quite trivial. There's also included in here is just under £250,000 worth of carry forwards, which we always have this discussion at the end of each year. So it's effectively break even. But that the year has not been straightforward by any means. And you're only going to look at page 53 to see that. And it's pretty obvious where the problems lie. And if you look at the Children's Trust, that's an overspend of just under 12 million. It's an awfully big number in our budget, and adults of 10.5, just over 10.5 million. So we've managed to get around that, so it's various means. But what it does do, of course, it strips out our abilities to do other things. And I really echo Ian's words there earlier on, because that sums it up in one. I mean, we would be very, very nice here to be arguing about what we're going to do with 12 million or what have you, rather than this. Anyway, that's where we are. Now it's so that's the story of last financial year. So now we move on to this year, and it's worth saying at this stage in that all the we've got period 3 or the first quarter. We will be discussing that at our meetings tomorrow morning. And it's looking like broadly, everybody, with the exception of Children's, is looking on track. Now, Children's are again registering likely to be a big overspend. And so we've got to deal with that. It's the biggest single issue that we have. And it's without any doubt, on top of my agenda, and very difficult to deal with it because we have no power over them. But we've to deal with it. We must, because we cannot carry on year after year like this. In financial terms. So that's the situation in last year, which is what I'm here to report on. And that the other one I have to report on is on the HRA, provisional outturn, and that's balanced. That's not a problem. That's very straightforward, always well in control. What's interesting there, I think it's interesting anyway, is that the income is around about 52-53 million. Input, and we've got a bad debt situation of, and I'm referring really to comment that I think that Wendy made last time. The bad debt situation is a little bit over £400,000, which is actually quite good when you consider the activity that's taking place. The write-off for bad debts in our normal, the day-to-day figures is usually about £750,000. So that's bearing in mind the size of it. So that's the situation, Chair. And I'm very happy to take any questions on it that anybody would like to throw at us.
Jolly good. Thank you, Malcolm. That's great. We've 2 speakers. Shall we jump straight to our speakers? First one is Councillor Holland-Delamere. Keith, over to you.
Okay. I recognise how difficult a year it has been. We did use up the £10 million contingency, and we were very fortunate with the business rates. My also concern is that with this, there's a lot of talk about the fact that in various areas we're holding off on recruiting staff, or we've got vacancies. So the fact is we were saved very much by keeping the vacancy rate so high, which does impact on services. And also very much a concern is that the fact that we are deferring spending to the current year. So for example, I know in various areas when you put in a report, say this needs to be replaced, of course we'll put it on the list and it ends up being the following financial year. So we're deferring spending all the time. So thank you to the team, but it's going to still be very much a struggle. And I recognise 2 key areas, the Children's Trust and adult social care, that are a continual headache for us. And until we get that market reform that we need in certain areas, we're going to continue encountering those headaches. That's all my comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Keith. Malcolm, did you want to comment, or we take?
Yeah, a couple of points there. The interesting one about business rates is that ever since I've been doing these numbers, and that's NCC days and through now, we always have had historically a happy event at the year end with business rates. So long may it continue. And that seems to go well. I think that's an expanding county as much as anything, but hopefully we'll do the same again this year. The interesting vacancy one, typically we would put in the budget. I think this year, I think I'm right in saying 4%, James, is that we budget for that because that's historically what's happened, try as we may. So, but you're right to say that it's going to be another tricky year unless we resolve this issue of the children's care. Then it will be difficult because it'll suck out expenditure that would otherwise go elsewhere. It's not difficult to see, is it? So anyway, thanks for your comments, Keith.
Thank you, Malcolm. Councillor Harris, Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, councillors. A little bit of an echo, but I think it is worth noting. My colleague, Councillor Bidsworth, I think at last Cabinet, unfortunately, I couldn't be here for that meeting, asked if the year-end position had been achieved without any form of contingency or reserves. And I think it's important that we clarify the points that have made by my fellow councillors earlier, that yes, there was a £5 million contingency budgeted for. So it was in the budget, but it has been used to offset the year-end figures. My understanding is the £10 million from the business rates was a one-off rather than an annual thing. So my understanding, if I'm correct, is that is now effectively used up. So I think for the record, it's important we understand that there have been funds to offset to get to the position of the 302,000. I would have raised it at full council, Councillor Longley, but we ran out of time, so I didn't get the opportunity to get to you, unfortunately. But I think it signifies, when you put that in the context of the pressures on adult social care and children's, that there are other things in the mix, clearly, that we've had to utilise to get to the point that we are. So it's really just a question to make sure that we're clear about that, because I think everyone needs to understand that those pressures are there. And, we've had to rely on some funds to get us to the point that we are. I do have a question, however, and did links rather to last year to this year. In the budget for this year, there was an £18 million uplift specifically for contractual pressures. And I wonder whether you could give us a view on what we're seeing thus far in almost 4 months into the current financial year in terms of ongoing inflationary effects.
I'll deal with that one first. Yeah, as I said, I touched on it earlier in that so far, so good is we budgeted for it. And it's, we'll know far more when we get the final figures out from my colleague on my right here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. But so far, so good everywhere apart from children's. And I've spoken to that already. It's at the moment, it's showing a similar situation to the previous year. But experience teaches us that we've got to be careful of that because it could go the wrong way. So what it means is that everybody else has got to be on track. They don't get any worse and we haven't got a problem. Now, I'll go back to your other comment on contingencies and reserves. We mustn't get mixed up with the two of them. The contingencies are put in a budget and, if required, are used, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's got to come somewhere. And in this current year, not last year, we've also put contingencies in for that because we expect problems. We don't want to use them, but we use them if we have to. And last year we took out 5 million from the general reserves. Now that's more significant, as you will appreciate. That's something we don't want to be doing in future. However, we'll do what we have to balance the books as and when it turns up. And I think I've already laboured the issue that we've got to deal with, and deal with it we will attempt to do. But it got to come from somewhere, Jonathan.
Jolly good. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Malcolm. Any further comments at all that anybody would like to add at this point? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Malcolm. And overall, given the challenges faced, I think this has to be considered, you know, a good result. And we want to thank so many people, from the directors, chief executive, all the way down to every person in the organisation to deliver this result. And the recommendations of this paper, as always, are at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement, please, to the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. Takes us back to Malcolm, provisional outturn on capital, after which, once you've introduced, we've got, again, same two speakers. We've got Councillor Holland, Mayor, and Councillor Harris. Over to you, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, fairly straightforward, really, because the key meeting there is the CAB meeting, CAB, Capital and Assets Board, which actually met again this morning, and it's a tightly controlled situation. And if you look at what happened last year, because that's what I'm reporting on here, the actual expenditure on capital was just under 60 million, so fairly substantial. And of that, 20 million, just over 20 million, came in borrowings. That's additional borrowings. But having said that, if you look at the maturity profile, you'll see that that's broadly a little bit over, but not much different than the actual maturity balance. So the key here is to get the capital expenditure without excessive borrowing. So it's a balancing act here, because obviously that impacts on the revenue line. And that's what we try very hard to do. Our priorities are, first, if it's self-funding or funded from somewhere else, that's fine. We can't do anything about that. Second thing is productivity, and I bang on about this every possible opportunity. Third item, then statutory stuff. These are items you can't do anything about, you must do that. And then you get matched funding, and then eventually, if you still got capital left, you can do other things, but that's a rarity. So the Capital Assets Board controls this, and controls it, I'd like to think, quite well. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's move to our speakers then. Keith, over to you first.
Yeah, so it's quite stark, the amount of rephasing that had to take place in this budget. And so how confident are we that we will use up the capital that we've got on allocated projects this financial year? And basically also there's a risk that if we don't spend it in time, we could end up with the government asking for money back. Now, of course, they're acutely aware of all the problems in the markets at the moment, but just really, how good is our project management at the moment on these projects?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Well, we take a lot of trouble to make sure we don't give money back to the government when we can, as you probably appreciate. But you're right, there's a lot of rephasing takes place, and that's historically been the case. And we, in the finance arena, we report on it. We don't actually do it, so not a lot I can say to that. But yeah, I mean, it's once it's been agreed, there's no reason why it shouldn't be spent. And the key is absolutely not to pay it back. And but that's very alive to that. I mean, obviously, you know, in fact.
Good, thank you. And then our next speaker, Councillor Harris. Jonathan, back to you.
Thank you. So capital projects is obviously a significant figure and still shows a significant value. And again, similar theme there does appear to be a number of overruns and some quite significant delays. And quite a lot of those capital projects, is my understanding, again, have been carried over, or at least some of them have been carried over from legacy councils. Obviously, we're now 2 years plus into the new unitary. So my question is, what sort of work is taking place to evaluate the capital projects that still exist on the list? They're quite considerable, as to whether they're still real and relevant. And the specific reason for asking that question is, obviously, as a council, we're constantly under pressure and looking for capital for plenty of other things. So it's a question as to whether there's a likelihood of any of those funds are going to be freed up for other things.
Unlikely, Jonathan. I'm not saying never, because you've got to look at each one on its merits, of course. But broadly, when it's been agreed at the Capitalist Board, you would expect that project to go through to the end and the money to be spent. I don't know if Phil wants to comment, or Stuart here, but we just wouldn't tend on the financing to get overly involved. We've got a very, very bright girl, Sharon, who keeps pretty good, closely, you probably know her, and keeps a pretty good handle on this. But as far from a financial perspective, what I'm reporting on, then we wouldn't overly interfere. Once it's agreed, once it's settled, it's in the plan, it's up to departments to deliver it.
So just to add to that, if I may, so there's no lifespan to these. Effectively, they could sit on the books for some considerable time.
Well, depends where you are, you see. I mean, if you've got 3/4 down a project, you don't turn it off. I mean, Stuart, do you want to sort of comment on that sort of approach?
Stuart's going to come in there, I think. Over to you, Stuart.
Yeah, and just to give assurance that with every project, we've got project management in place and a real grip on the different milestones and gateways to every project. So at CAB, Capital and Assets Board, there is a regular review of highway projects, school projects at a quarterly level, regeneration, etc. So all capital programs are reviewed on a quarterly basis, and the obvious RAG rating and monitoring goes on as part of that. Obviously, there's different phases as the Councillor Longley has identified. If we're committed to a scheme and a scheme is on site, then we will continue to review and mitigate any costs, engineering, etc., etc. And largely, I think if you see the capital programme in terms of the projects that are on site, they're all being delivered pretty much to time and to budget. And given the cost inflations we've seen over the last few years, that is, again, quite a remarkable feat. In terms of future projects, we go through a feasibility and a gateway programme, and we're always checking whether the deliverability, the viability, and indeed the business case is in place and is continued to be monitored. So as Councillor Longley has said, I would never say never in terms of cost escalation or whether we find things in the ground or whatever that changes the business case. That would require us to go back to CAB and then review at that particular stage. But we do have a firm grip on every single project, and then the monitoring is there, and I'm sure is open for members to view if they ever wish to look at that.
Worthy of note, James just reminded me that any of the legacy projects that when the budget cycles coming round again very quickly, and any legacy projects that haven't had an expenditure, we'd chop it if we we take a view of it, obviously, but it have a good chance of being chopped.
Jolly good. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Malcolm. And any other comments or queries at all on this from anyone in the cabinet? No. Okay. Recommendations, as always, are at section. No, actually, on this occasion, they're at section 2. Can I ask you just confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Takes us on to item 9. This is the SEND strategy. It's with Fiona. After Fiona has made some introductory comments on this, we have 4 speakers. First is Councillor Roberts, then Councillor Stone, Councillor Beardsworth, and Councillor Randall. Fiona. Yes, yes, by all means. Yeah, after you've made the initial introduction in the normal way. Yes, indeed. Yes, of course. Sorry, not on the list, but I beg your pardon. We have Claire Baxter. Is that right?
Yes,
I missed that on the
yes.
list. It's my mistake.
Thank you.
Jolly good. Over to you first, Fiona, then over to you.
Thank you very much. The last 2 weeks have been really challenging for a group of our local children and parents, as we had to make some difficult decisions to make sure we had appropriate school provision in place, ready for the new academic year. I need to acknowledge the impact this has had on children and their families, and I'm committed that the council will learn from this experience. For me as a cabinet member, the last 2 weeks have also been challenging. I remain disappointed that we have not delivered against our own expectations, and I'm sorry for the experience this group of children and families have had. Whilst there are some local things we need to improve, some of the things we are struggling with are national issues completely outside of our control. I do have to say that calls for my resignation are not helpful, not just for me personally, but also for the service, as it doesn't support the stability that we're working so hard to create and which is essential for us to build the team we need in order to improve outcomes for our children. I am very grateful to the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities team who continue to work incredibly hard. Tonight, I present to Cabinet a new SEND and alternative provision strategy, which sets out our ambitions and aspirations for all children and young people with SEND in West Northants. The strategy is not just for the council, but for the local partnership that we lead. This includes all services for young people aged 0 to 25 with special educational needs and disabilities. The new strategy includes our local partnership commitment for the next 3 years, and we will see us report annually on our progress. But let me be clear, whilst the strategy clearly sets out our commitment and ambition around SEND, it won't automatically mean that everything will be perfect. It will take time to get where we want to be. There will be occasions over the next 3 years where we will not deliver against our own expectations. And unfortunately, that will result in poor outcomes for a small number of children. We already know that over the next 6 months, we have a number of complaints, including those considered by the LGO, which will reach conclusion. These complaints will further demonstrate the improvements we need to make and will challenge our practice. We will learn from these experiences and acknowledge any failings. We are, however, confident that our new strategy will support us to move in the right direction and continues to increase focus on SEND that we started in early 2022, with the recruitment of additional leaders with experience of securing improvements for children and a dedicated SEND improvement team. Our new SEND Improvement Board will drive the delivery of this strategy. To further demonstrate our commitment to transparency and accountability, I propose an additional recommendation to Cabinet this evening, that alongside the annual report, a summary of the minutes from the meeting of the SEND Improvement Board be published on the Council's website, which we have indicated to the Paul Hanson already. In the West Northants, we are over 12,000 children and young people identified with additional needs, and this number continues to increase beyond all national planning assumptions. It is therefore vital that we get the delivery of this strategy right and ensure that it recognises the experience of local children and their families. In order to achieve this, we engage with all 186 local schools and over 500 early years providers, children and families. Over 800 people, of which nearly 60% were children and their families, attended co-production events and shared over 3,000 pieces of feedback. Whilst this gives us a level of confidence in our strategy, we acknowledge that this level of engagement needs to continue in order to ensure that co-production is embedded and we don't miss anybody. All of this feedback was pulled together with our key partners to agree the priorities, the final strategy you have in your papers today. I would like to say a big thank you to everyone involved, especially to those children and families who attended our co-production events. In particular, I also want to thank my colleagues in the council, to the education experts who've given their time to shape the strategy, to Rachel Akers, our designated clinical officer for children and young people with SEND, Claire Gibson, Head of Children's Specialist Services from Northampton Hospital Foundation Trust, Dr. Kevin Rowland, MBE, SEND and Disability Professional Advisor at the DFE, and Claire Baxter, Coordinator for NPFG, who represent children and families' voices. Lastly, thank you to my fellow councillors for their engagement, challenge, and their support. I move the report to Cabinet for approval.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you very much indeed. We'll make some more comments, I think, shortly. But first of all, we'll then welcome our speakers. And so first of all, can we welcome, please, Claire Baxter, Claire from the Parent Forum. It's the button in the middle. If you use the microphone there, that'd be really helpful. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. I'm here as the Interim West Coordinator for Northampton Parent Forum. We are the formally recognised organisation who represent all parent carers of children and young people with disabilities and SEND, ensuring that we maintain a pan-disability approach. This academic year, we have seen a significant improvement in the relationships and commitment to co-production between NPFG and our statutory partners, especially within the council. We recognise that there are still improvements to be made, but we are confident in the new team and the approach they are taking. We continue to ensure that parent carers' voices are heard and the council are challenged where appropriate. We are pleased to see the new SEND and AP strategy being proposed tonight. This new strategy is an excellent example of co-production. We have been involved in the design of the co-production events you have already heard about. We jointly delivered these events and have been involved throughout the development of the strategy. This has included reviewing and analysing data and feedback to help identify those key priorities listed within the strategy. We also know that the council and partners have committed to continuing this approach of co-production through the SEND Improvement Board and all of its working groups, which we as NPFG are fully part of. We continue to provide support and appropriate challenge to the council and partners. We aim to do this in a constructive way in order to improve the outcomes for our children and young people with SEND. My colleagues and I would be pleased to be part of any wider developments that provide services for children and young people with SEND. Finally, I would like to thank all strategic and voluntary services across West Northants and our parent carers within our community for working with us, sharing information, both positive and negative, and showing a desire to improve. Things are not where they need to be right now, but every journey does begin with a single step. Thank you.
It's marvellous. Thank you, Claire. Thank you very much indeed. Right, let's take our further speakers then, the councillors. First of all, we've Councillor Roberts. Emma, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to see the additional recommendation that I requested coming forward this evening with regards to the SEND Improvement Board. I hope that we can publish those minutes and that we have a full accountability and transparency policy in respect of that improvement board, because I think it really does show an excellent commitment. I really appreciate the comments you've made this evening, Councillor Baker. I think it's crucial that people hear that from you and hear the way in which the authority wishes to take this strategy forward. The strategy, though, is a vision document at the moment, and the crucial part for me will be that the delivery documents clearly referenced within the strategy, they happen. They come forward, we see those delivery documents, and we actually see the visions in this strategy playing out in real time and in real terms. There's a couple of errors I've pointed out to officers within the document with regards to the use of the word Northampton instead of Northamptonshire. I know they're going to be amended. There's a couple of points that I'd like to add around co-production and the fact that we need to see transformational co-production from this document. You know, co-production is people getting together and talking about an item, but they need to be equal partners in that process, in the delivery of public services. The definition of co-production within the document doesn't use the transformational co-production definition, and I think it could, but I appreciate that it is a vision document and there are lots to do underneath it. I'd like to see us develop a parental engagement strategy underneath this document alongside MPFG, because I completely appreciate Claire's comments and I appreciate the hard work of MPFG, but not everybody feels that currently their voices are represented using that forum, and we need to find a way to bring those groups of people together. And I absolutely believe that is essential to making this strategy work. Within the document, there's some references to kind of how we're going to include people and how we're going to make people thrive as a result of the report. Again, I think we need to continue those engagement events that we've done over the last few months. They were clearly working, but we need to continue those so that people can respond to how we're delivering the strategy and how we're progressing forward. There's a community impact reference in the document, and I'd like us to just kind of reflect on it. It says the strategy will deliver significant community impact. I think it's the delivery plans and the work of the officers and the cultural shift that we need to take as an authority that will actually deliver that community impact. So I just want us to reflect on that. I'm excited to see this work, and I'm excited to work together with everybody that's willing to do so to make this happen for our children. I appreciate it's not an overnight success. First thing we can do, though, is communicate in the way in which you've just communicated this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Next speaker, Councillor Stone. Danielle.
Just a quick comment, Chair, before I begin. I think I heard one of our councillors calling women girls. I really object to that. We're not girls, we're women. I just want to put that on the table. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to say, my heart gave a little leap when I saw this report. It's very, very beautifully done. And I'm really pleased to read about all the engagement events. And I'm really sincerely pleased about that. But I have a lot of concerns. I've been a councillor a long time now, so I have been here before. I have been here before with very beautiful reports, full of vision and full of ambition. And so what we need to see are timelines, isn't it? We want to know how, where, and when, don't we? So this document is beautiful and it's a starting point, but it makes me reflect on, well, what happened to the 2020 strategy document? What happened to that? And why isn't there any reference to that here? We had a strategy document for send in 2020. What happened? When I see documents like this, I don't want it to appear as if we're beginning from nowhere. There is a history, and I want to see what learning has been done from that history. I want to know what we delivered under the last strategy and what we didn't. And moreover, you know, what I really want to know is why things went wrong with SEND education. This is not a sudden thing. It's been a long, slow burn, hasn't it? And when I talk to parents about it, they will tell me it started in 2014. 3 years into austerity, 3 years into massive cuts in the budgets for children. I remember a time when all our schools were excellent, where we had special provision in mainstream schools, when we had brilliant respite provision, when we had weekend, holiday and evening provision for SEND children. And all of that suddenly got hollowed out and disappeared. Why? I want to know why. And the reason for that isn't, I'm not into shaming and blaming, but I do not want to see that happen again. You know, if this is the beginning of a journey, you have got to reflect that we have had this happen over and over. So you have to tell us what is going to be different this time. And for me, what's crucial in that, what is going to be different, is resource, it's investment. It's practical things, you know. We cannot have this beautiful document and then have people failed because we don't deliver on it. It is absolutely crucial. There was a time when our provision for SEND was held up nationally as a really good service. That's long gone. That's long gone. We've got a huge way to make up. And
We'll
I
just wind you up there.
Okay, thank you.
If we could ask you to. Thank you. Thank you very much, Danielle. Next speaker, Councillor Beardsworth. Sally.
Right. Thank you, Chair. It's a wonderful report. It's very cleverly done and it's very easy to read for most people. The worry I've got is we've had reports like this before and we want to see outcomes from them. We want to see children getting places at schools, and that's not happening at the moment. And we don't seem to, we look at a strategy and we say, this is about children, but it's the individual parents that are at home with their child that's not getting any stimulation or mixing with other children, or all the things that you get by going to school. And I really feel as though a lot of the people don't trust us anymore to do the right thing. And I think our reputation has suffered badly because of this. I mean, how many court cases do we have, or cases that come to court to answer these things? And I know the officers are trying. I know Ben and Stuart are working hard, and I know there are problems, but I think we need to be honest with people. I think we need to tell them the problems we've got, rather than produce a document which, you know, the vision is great, absolutely great, but the reality is far from great. The reality is that children aren't getting an education. They're not getting all the social benefits of going to school. And that is the biggest problem. I welcome this report. I just want to see the outcomes, and I hope the outcomes could come quickly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. And the last speaker is Councillor Randall. Wendy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I've read through this document and it seems it's more of a wish list. I don't see any plans on and timelines, as Councillor Stone said, on how it's going to be delivered. Councillor Baker, you alluded to things that have already gone wrong. So we've got the Hunsbury School delayed, causing extreme distress to parents. We've got the Tiffield School now delayed by a year. We've spent 275,000 fighting families. We've had 48,000 in payouts in compensation. We've got children left in schools where schools have said they're unable to meet their needs. And this isn't only 2 years that you've been in this role under WNC. I understand that you've been under children since 2019 in the County Council as well. Failure after failure after failure. This is not helping our children out there. We have families on the phone with it. They're extremely distressed and we are failing our young people. I can't see really what this is going to improve that. You're still not communicating well with families. And yes, you've had those public meetings, and all the words that come out of there was openness and transparency, good communication. And then again, recently, we've seen failure after failure and parents still being told different stories and not being told the truth. You know, they would much rather, everybody knows that we have budgets that we're struggling, but people like the truth. It's much better to say, you know, we have got a delay in this. Can we talk about it? Can we come together? Can we come up with an action plan? And I just do not see that happening. So, and yes, Councillor Baker, I do feel like, and I've said right at the very beginning when this council was formed, as cabinet members, you are the ones that are responsible for overseeing everything. And we just keep seeing failure. So yes, Councillor Baker, I would call on your resignation. Thank you.
Okay, jolly good. This is a major priority, not just Fiona, but for all the cabinet. We've seen an increase, for example, in EHCPs of 68% since 2018. This is a massive problem, a national problem. It's a top priority for us and we're working on it top speed. Not everything is easy in life. It's not that smooth thing that you might present and think. So if we have to react to a different plan, as we have done at Hunsbury and Chiltern and so on, that's what we do. But this is a major thing. There are significant 12,000 families in West Northants who have touched by somebody member who is SEND, most of whom we're serving reasonably well. In their increasing capacity needed, we're racing like heck to deliver it. No one can do that better than Fiona. And I think it's easy to make cheap comments about this is a failure, that's a failure. I don't see that reflected elsewhere. I see people participating in a scheme that they're signed up knowing that the world is not perfect and this service is not perfect, but boy, you couldn't be doing much more to improve it and to make it work. So we'll put full weight behind this, not just Fiona, but all 10 of the cabinet, all of the senior officers, not just the relevant directors, the chief executives and all else to really make this happen through our property department and everything where we're building the extensions and the new school. That's our complete commitment to get this right in the face of a really challenging national situation. Does anybody else want to make any other comments on this at all? Matt, do you want to come in there?
There we go. Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to echo some of your comments. And as a long-standing cabinet colleague of Councillor Baker's, I just want to recognise Councillor Baker's commitment and dedication to this role. And this is an incredibly challenging area to work in. We all know that. And it's not just here, it's a nationally challenging many, many different areas. So I just want to recognise the dedication and commitment of Councillor Baker, not just in the lifespan of this council. And it's so easy for opposition members to sit on the other side of the fence and make statements, call for resignations. That's not what we're here for. We're here to do our jobs as best as we can. And Councillor Baker, in my book, is the best person within our council to be doing that. So I just want to offer my support to Councillor Baker. Thank you.
I think in a much better place to build the stability for the team we need and that our parents deserve. A couple of people coming in. Adam, you're going to come in, and then Stuart, I think.
Yeah, just to note, Mr. Chairman, that during the comments we heard, with the honourable exception of Councillor Roberts, I think there was a pretty stark failure to engage with the substance of the strategy before us. It was almost as though some people had a cursory glance through the strategy, but not put a lot of thought into possible alternatives, possible policy suggestions that might in some way enhance the strategy before us. I didn't hear any of that, and nor have I heard the opposition able to identify a single political choice made by Councillor Baker that has been in any way wrong. So I think before people call for resignations, they need to identify fault with political choices rather than just identifying operational issues that have delivered suboptimal outcomes, when actually the policy being put in place by the cabinet member is as far as possible, in my view, very sound indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Stuart, you're going to come in too, I think.
Thank you, Chair. So over the last 2 weeks, we've had to convey some really difficult messages. Can I say that we've done the best job of that all the time? Probably not. I do struggle with the notion that we haven't told people the truth, because that kind of makes an insinuation that we haven't been honest about some of this stuff. We're absolutely committed to being really transparent around the things that we do well, but also the things that we struggle with. I think the main takeaway from me across the comments that I've heard tonight is that the strategy very clearly sets the tone, but the proof of the pudding will be in the delivery of this. And I think we've got to firmly get into that position of being able to demonstrate how we are improving outcomes for children and families locally. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Stuart. Any further comments? Anybody else on the cabinet for this? No? Okay. In which case, the recommendations are at section 3. There was just one recommendation. I think what Fiona is suggesting is that we formally add that alongside the annual report, a summary of the SEND Improvement Board minutes for each meeting will be published on the council's website.
Yes,
is that the precise wording, or you've given Paul wording, have you, to add?
Yes, we've given Paul the wording.
You've got the wording, yeah, lovely. Okay, so with that additional recommendation, can I just ask you to confirm your agreement, please, to the recommendation? Is that agreed? Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, and that takes us on to item 10. This is a very exciting project. This is the Towns Fund Ledger Project business case, which is with Dan. After Dan's talked us through it, we have two councillor speakers. We have Councillor Jolly and we have Councillor Beardsworth. Dan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very right. It's a very exciting project. So this is the redevelopment of the marketplace, Peacock Place, Market Square, whatever you want to call it, Market Walk project, shopping centre. So this has remained vacant for quite some time now. So this is a opportunity for a company to come in and develop leisure, food, really regenerate the nightlife and the daytime footfall of this area. So we're estimating at 1 million per year footfall, and it's really going to complement the Market Square and the Abington Street regeneration that we've already got going on there, to see more people coming in, using our town, and really the people taking back the town, the ownership of the town, and enjoying what we've got here in Northampton. Without this, it's likely the site will remain vacant, or a development which is less than satisfactory for our town. You know, we've seen some potential planning go in for flats and things like that, which wouldn't be good for our town, would be good for our marketplace and our shopping areas. It does replace the Emporium Way project, but as people may have seen, that the master plan request has gone out for Emporium Way, so that will come forward again when we have a plan with Greyfriars, Rat Island, all these lovely little places that we've got. And Emporium Way again, which will feed through back onto the Market Square again. But yes, it's a really great project, Chair. I'm going to keep it brief because I know we've got a busy night, but any questions, appreciate them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Let's go to our two speakers. Councillor Jolly, Cooler, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I think we all welcome the development and the investment into the Market Walk, Peacock Place, whatever you want to call it. I know it as Peacock Place. I'm reading the report. I think one thing I want to kind of look at is really the key benefits of giving the money to a property developer rather than us buying it and running the development ourselves. Also, the long-term viability. What will happen if the project is not a success? If it could fall apart quickly, if this is not executed properly. We've seen many projects in the past which hasn't had the planning and the execution right. And I think, yes, it can work if the planning and execution is right. Also, I want to kind of look at the developer. Have we done the due diligence? Has it been done? Is it an ethical organisation? We don't want this money going into the wrong hands, do we? And I think that's something that we need to make sure and double check again. And there's lots of projects going on in the town. So have we had a bird's eye view? Do they all complement each other? Because we also need to think about projects which are going ahead. And that's a key thing that we want to do, make sure that they all complement. And have we looked at alternative areas of the projects where we can spend our money and get more value, better value for money as well out the outcome? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Councillor Beardsworth. Sally.
Thank you, Chair. When I read this, I was quite excited to start with, and then I had some doubts. Have the police been informed about this? I mean, it's going to be quite a large entertainment centre for people to come to, and from what they're saying will be included is 10-pin bowling and various other things, and eateries and things like that. And I'm just wondering what effect it will have on the other parts of the town. We have a 10-pin bowling place at Sixfields. We have restaurants throughout the town. Is this going to impact on their work? Are they going to go to the wall because this new place, which like everybody else, anything new comes along, everybody rushes it because it's new and exciting. And the trouble is with Northampton Town Centre, especially on a Friday and a Saturday night, it has a really unfortunate reputation because people just go in there, and I have been round with police on numerous occasions in the evening and realised how, alcohol can make such a difference to people when they've had too much of it. So I just, part of me is pleased that we're doing something with Peacock Way or Market, whatever you want to call it, but I have some reservations. What's going to happen if this fails? Are we going to be left with a white elephant? And I know we shouldn't look at that failure, but with today's cost of living rise, people's mortgages going up, how much money are people going to have to spend on leisure activities? So I do have concerns. I hope you've looked into this in depth, because our experience with outside developed hasn't been good in the past, and I don't want to make the same mistakes that we made elsewhere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. Okay, Dan, did you want to pick up on any of those? But look, I think it's fair to say the analysis has gone into it. The police are heavily involved, and of course they're on the Northampton Forward Board, aren't they? So have all these things been considered? The answer is yes, I think, Dan, isn't there? Sorry to take your line, but you go ahead. If there's anything else you want to pick up.
You know, there's benefits. Yeah, there is a viability gap on there. Yeah, but we are getting £12 million worth of investment back for a £4 million spend that we're putting in, which is if you look at the report, it does highlight a 2.6 benefit cost ratio without the regeneration benefits, include the regeneration benefits, construction benefits, and other things. You know, long-term viability, we have clawback in there. So if they do run away, go bust, do whatever they want to say, we do have the right to get the building. It's an empty building at the moment. In answer to the question, do we want it to remain empty? It's sat there empty. There's people sleeping in the doorways. Do we want to turn it into something? It's not going to turn into a shopping centre anymore. The choices are: we leave it where it is. They turn it into, someone turns it into flats, maybe, or something, which I don't think any of us want in this room, or any councillors want in this room. So we need to see something different. We need to see something. We've got lots of students in this town. We're a university town, unfortunately, and we don't have a nightlife here for them. You very, very rarely see students coming out in Northampton town. They were living, you talk to the university, they're living in Nottingham or Leicester. And we need to see them back in the town and using the town and enjoying it and spending the money here in Northampton. And that's the choices we've got: leave it empty or do something with it. And we've got a developer who's come forward who says, we've made this work elsewhere. We're doing it elsewhere as well. They've got places in Lincoln that they're doing it. And, there's lots of great places. It's not just, the historical ones have been in shipping containers, but, they're doing it elsewhere, and the footfall is good. And actually the areas that they've developed it in have seen other bigger areas, regeneration projects come up, and people really saying, actually, this is a good thing. We want to be here. So I think it'll work. The team has done a lot of work with the developer, and thank the officers for it, because it has taken a long time to get here and get it there. Absolutely. And but yeah, I think it's a great project, so I'd highly commend it. Stuart's got anything else to say?
Thank you. Stuart's going to chip in, I think. Are you, Stuart? Did you want to add?
Sorry, sir. Yeah, just a couple of extra points there. I think Councillor Lister has certainly identified the catalyst of change that this has proved in many other areas, and again, working with local authorities. So that's one point I'd like to make, is that in all of those areas that they're currently looking at developing, etc., it is very much hand in glove with the local authorities. In terms of the due diligence, absolutely. We've gone through very strict, this is grant money, and therefore there are grant requirements that go alongside of that. But also as a council, we take that due diligence very seriously. We've also talked to other partners in terms of the impact, and that includes the police, regulatory services and planning. So again, it's due diligence plus is what I would say. In terms of the last point I'd like to make is in regard to the consultation that took place in regard to the whole strategy of the town. And this came up as one of the top two areas and priorities for the council. So in relation to have we got the right, or identified the right development and the right opportunity, certainly that was the message we got from the consultation, as well as I say, the opportunity isn't just about the building and renovating the building. It's an opportunity that will be there for the whole town. And I think other businesses, as we've seen in other similar areas, it's other businesses benefit from it rather than are impacted by it. So again, just to really reiterate some of the points Councillor Lister made and maybe add a little bit extra there. Thank you.
It's the Weatherspoons effect, as I always say. Places that have Weatherspoons in them, the pubs actually thrive around them because Weatherspoons get packed out and then they go to the other pubs. And it's that same effect that we need to understand in terms of an entertainment complex. People do actually use them when they're coming in and using into the town. They will actually go there. And that's what we need to see in Northampton, all these people coming in. And also the timings of the project. I think you said about what's the, where can we spend it elsewhere? There is timings that we've got to do on the town's fund money. There's limits on what it was. And this was highlighted, as I think Stuart mentioned, that this was a project that we wanted to do originally, but the timings were so far in the future, it wasn't available within the timeline. So yeah, thank you.
And also previously for the council to buy the project has been unsuitable without having a constructive partner to work together to actually deliver it. We have looked at it previously buying it, haven't we? David, you wanted to make some comments.
Just to say, the challenge for any town in 2023 onwards is footfall. And this is going to provide just that. So I've said it in this chamber before, build it and they will come. And I firmly believe in this project. I think it's a very, very good project. I think our retailers and residents of West Northamptonshire will absolutely benefit from this.
Jolly good. Okay, if there's no further comments, David, we've still got the purple flag in Northampton for the Safe Nights Out recognition, haven't we? Yeah. It's the places get a bit lively, don't they, in the evening, but nevertheless, I think we're on the forefront with the various initiatives going on around the town, the ID stuff and so on that's being rolled out. Did you want to comment on that, Stuart? Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to correct a notion that this is about drinking and drinking culture. Again, I've been to see the examples of this particular development, and they at certain times of the day present opportunities for families. We see more families going to the areas. It is very clear. You talked about ethical stance, etc. They are very, very clear in terms of management of alcohol, etc. So it's not. This is about entertainment. It's about food. It's about quality. It's about bringing something that doesn't exist to the town. So again, I'm excited by this. I'm excited that it's chosen Northampton to come to, along with Lincoln, along with Newcastle, Carlisle, Durham. These are places where this development is starting to get those people excited. And I think, it will do the same once people see more detail and see what they're about and how they actually manage the function of the building, etc. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for your comments. Any further comments on this one at all? No? Good. Okay, in which case the recommendations are at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement, please? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 11. This is the procurement of new strategic transport model. It's with Phil. Phil.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks approval from Cabinet for the procurement of a new strategic transport model. This is a computer simulation of local traffic and public transport movements, which can forecast future traffic and congestion levels based on an evidence base, including mobile phone, census, growth, and traffic count data. We have an existing model, which has been a valuable tool over the past 6 years, but is now nearing the end of its life and is in need of a rebuild using updated data to ensure its continued reliability. The model will be a vital source of evidence for the council's local plan and transport plan, assessing the impact and required mitigation for large development proposals across West Northamptonshire, major scheme funding bid submissions to government as well. The contract will be commissioned in partnership with North Northamptonshire Council, with West Northamptonshire as the lead authority. The paper, Mr. Chairman, explains how this provides the authority with full and direct access to its own model in the most cost-effective way. Procurement requires a cabinet decision due to the value of the contract, with the initial model build expected to cost in the region of £500,000. And future work commissioned using the model will take the value of the contract to approximately £2 million over its 8-year duration. Funding for the initial model build is already in place, sourced from transport service fee income accumulated from developers over recent years by both councils. Future use of the model will be funded separately through a combination of third-party, i.e. developers, charges and separate council project budgets. So project budgets will pay for the cost as well. So on that basis, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to present the report for approval. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Phil. With 3 speakers here, Councillor Purser, Councillor Holland-Ellenmayer and Councillor Harris. So Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. There's no doubt we need an up-to-date model and don't question the way that it's proposed to deliver it. That seems to be absolutely fine. But transport modelling has a, some would say, checkered history. And really, and there are substantial critiques, particularly of them, particularly in the modern environment in which we live. We need to be very clear about what we want out of the model so that we build in the right assumptions as it's built. Models in the past have been too car-based and too road-centred. And we need to think about, is this going to bring us solutions in terms of developing active travel? Are the needs of cyclists and pedestrians going to be built in? And are they going to be appropriately weighed against the vehicle and the and rail and alternative transport methods, so that our creative assumptions are going to be built in? Does it integrate with the rail strategy? Those sorts of questions. So I've got a plea that we really give very careful thought that this really is a model that's going to prepare us for the future and not produce answers that are okay for 5 years ago. That's my question to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bob, very much. Next speaker is Councillor Holland-Ellenmayer. Keith. You're happy? Yeah, lovely. In which case we'll go to Councillor Harris. Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just must refer briefly back to the previous item. Beware the Wetherspoon effect, Councillor Lister. They've closed 21 sites this year. They've got 30 up for sale and they closed 12 last year. So let's maybe reconsider calling it the Wetherspoon effect and
find a new name for it.
So onto this particular item. There is an echo to Councillor Purser here. There is a section, obviously 7.6, which refers to climate impact. Talks about an emissions module and carbon impacts. And I have the same concerns that we simply look at what we know about what we have now, which is reliance on the car. Our aspiration should be that our net zero pledge and our net zero desire for 2045 for this area should be central to the plan. And in my opinion, it doesn't play that significant part. And I accept it's just a paper and it's a proposal at the moment, but it's a plea again to make sure that that net zero focus is entirely built into whatever this looks like in the future. Most of you will know that we've got a cross-party sustainability group, which works well together, has made great progress on many issues. And I'm sure that they would wholeheartedly agree that this particular item or issue needs elevating within this particular proposal. Transport is one of the key carbon contributors. It's one of the key emissions contributors. We can't sit back and assume that technology will solve all of our problems. It will contribute and will make some significance, but we must be bold in this plan, and we must consider all alternatives, buses, rail, and obviously cycle and active travel. So same echo, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. A few useful points there in terms of sort of reassurance on any of those. Phil, would you like to comment, or perhaps?
Yeah,
Stuart as well?
I agree with what's been said, and I've, as you know, Chair, you've heard me say it often enough. A contract is only as good as the specification it's given. And we've got to get the specification of this right to include all the issues, whether it be active travel, rail, road, whatever. And we certainly take that on board. And Bob is absolutely right. Unfortunately, traffic modelling has had a very checkered history, and we need to make sure that we don't end up with something that continues in that same vein. So I've already mentioned that we must have something that is fit for purpose and works for today. And on that basis, Chair, I think we can push ahead and make sure the specification's right, and all the issues that have been raised are taken on board.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Stuart, were you going to add to that? Or no, you don't need to. No, Adam, you're going to come in next.
Just to set up, very pleased to hear Councillor Lowett's answer there, because I'm constantly being lobbied by people in Harpole, which is within cycling distance of Northampton, and people in villages in my ward, which are within cycling distance of Toaster, where we are tonight, and they want to see safe cycling routes from their villages into their nearest towns, and we really need the model to do that. So I think it's a point well raised by our opposition colleagues, and very glad to hear Councillor Lowett commit to doing his best to ensure that the model reflects those needs.
Chair, we've got a lot to do on safe cycling routes, and I think in Adam's ward, I think the development of Panatoni Park has seen a significant amount of cycle infrastructure. The problem is it doesn't connect up, and we've got to make sure that employment sites like that around West Northamptonshire do connect up. For example, the proposed development here, the other side of the A5, we've got to make sure that those sorts of things link up, and hopefully this strategic model will enable us to do that. But a lot of work to do, but we need, and we will, procure a system that takes all these things into account.
Thanks, Phil. Fiona, you going to comment?
Sorry, I was indicating before Councillor Larratt did his summing up, but I would just say, I'm sure you're aware of the lobby from villages around Brackley that want to be able to cycle into Brackley. They have done a lot of campaigning, so anything that helps to progress that plan would be really grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I just say, Chair, the Brackley local cycling walking infrastructure plan is well on its way. And yes, we're very aware of the issues, particularly to the south of Brackley, where a lot of people are keen to cycle from. And we all know the need to connect Brackley to Silverstone for employment purposes. And we've had a battle with HS2 over the Department for Transport over the HS2 bridge on the A43, but things seem to be going in the right direction. So yes, we are aware of that. Keep your eye open for the LC whip when it's published.
Jolly good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, on that one. So recommendations for that report, as always, are at item 3. Yeah. Could I ask you just to confirm your agreement to those recommendations? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 12, also with Phil. After Phil's initial introduction, we've got Councillor Roberts, Councillor Stone, Councillor Harris, and Councillor Randall. Home to school transport policy. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. This report is about homeschool transport for children under the age of 16, most of whom are entitled to free transport. So we're talking about a very few children relatively who are impacted by this overall paper. The cabinet paper and also, Mr. Chairman, this subject hasn't been reviewed for 10 years. So it's 10 years since this was last looked at by the County Council, and we need to bring it up to date and reflect current costs. This paper summarises the outcome of the recent public consultation on the proposed changes to the Council's homeschool transport policy for students of compulsory school age, i.e. under 16, and seeks approval to implement the following changes from September 2024. This is so that when this autumn parents make their decision about where to send their children, they do so in full knowledge of what the transport policy will be when they commence school. The new, let's start with the spare seat scheme, Chairman. A new spare seat scheme to replace the current arrangements whereby non-entitled students can apply for a seat on one of our existing contracted services and who are then guaranteed transport. This provision will be replaced, and instead there will be a requirement for parents and carers to use a seat under the new spare seat scheme. Transitional arrangements will be put in place for those who are currently making use of the existing scheme. The introduction of this new scheme will help the council reduce the number of services it procures and will relieve some of the demand on the bus, coach and private hire market, which is currently experiencing shortages of drivers and vehicles, and it will also help to manage costs. Review of the provision of transport for rising eights. This isn't strictly a policy change, but a change in our current process, whereby we will now regularly review transport entitlement for children who turn 8. Entitlement to free travel assistance changes when a child turns 8 years old, as the statutory walking distance increases from 2 miles to 3 miles. So children of 8 are expected to walk 3 miles, below that 2. The proposal is that that this will become a scheduled task at regular intervals throughout the academic year. Those children whose entitlement changes will not have their transport withdrawn until the academic year following their 8th birthday. Parents and carers will have the option to purchase a seat on their current transport under the new spare seat scheme, or appeal the council's decision to withdraw transport in the usual way. Removal of travel assistance for year 11 pupils who move home during the academic year. Currently, where a family move home during year 11 and their current school is no longer deemed their nearest or linked school, the council will consider providing travel assistance to support the student in completing their GCSEs. This discretionary provision will be removed unless the house move is necessitated by an emergency such as a house fire or due to domestic abuse. Review of suitable walking route criteria. The current walking route criteria is not clear and can be confusing for parents. The council has simplified this at the same time as ensuring that the safety of school children is maintained at all times. The cost of non-entitled bus pass, emphasis on non-entitled, which is very few children. The current policy provides discretionary travel assistance to non-entitled children at a cost of £600 per annum. This cost will increase to £1,000 from September 2024, so over 12 months' time. and that fee or that sum more accurately reflects the actual cost of providing a seat for non-entitled mainstream student. The actual cost of providing the seat is £1,040 at the moment. That will obviously be more come September 2024. So we still are subsidising the cost in some respects. So we're not making a profit out of this in any way, shape or form. The cost of the service will still be partially subsidised by the council. However, the increase in charge is necessary to ensure that the council can meet its medium-term financial plan. There's a couple of things that we won't be taking forward following the consultation. We have listened to what people have said, and we definitely won't be taking certain aspects forward. And I know certain parishes have been very appreciative of this. First of all, the issue of linked schools. This proposal has been withdrawn in the light of the impact this could have, particularly on more rural areas. Going forwards, the current list of linked schools will be referred to as geographically associated schools to remove any confusion with the term linked schools, which is also used in the council's school admissions booklet. The list will also be fixed and any changes would need to be approved by Cabinet. Removal of transport for children under 5 for mainstream pupils only. The equality impact assessment and public consultation feedback highlighted that this proposal could have a detrimental and disproportionate impact on children from lower income households, particularly those living in rural areas. This would be contrary to the council's vision, where children were given the best start in life and vulnerable children are supported and protected. Mr. Chairman, Cabinet are requested to approve the new policy for students of compulsory school age and the implementation of the policy and the beginning of the academic year commencing in September 2024. Approve the list of geographically associated schools and provide delegated authority to the Executive Director for Place, Economy and Environment in consultation with myself to make adjustments to the policy which are necessary to ensure that the policy remains compliant with legislation and statutory guidance issued by the Department of Education. I'm pleased to propose the report, Chairman.
Thanks, Phil. Let's go to our speakers. First was Councillor Roberts. Emma, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, very quickly, I'd just like to take a little bit of exception to Councillor Golby's comment earlier, that opposition councillors kind of sit there having it easy. I can assure you that on that particular topic over the last few weeks, I haven't had it easy, and the amount of work and casework that I receive as a result of the situation we find ourselves in. So we get the decisions are hard too. I just wanted to make that point. On this report, I specifically object to proposal 7, which is the increase of the cost from £600 to £1,000. When you read the report, it's absolutely clear that we have taken into account at some points the equality impact assessment at 6.1.8. We've specifically considered it and we've looked at what mitigations are needed and we've implemented those mitigations. We do it again at 6.2.10, really clearly done. But with this particular element of the proposal, 6.7, which is proposal 7, we seem to have completely ignored the equality impact assessment in its entirety, because if we don't, then we won't meet our MTFP. I don't think that's acceptable. I don't think ignoring all of the potential mitigation options within this report is acceptable just so we make the saving, because the report says that we've identified impacts on people's on age, disability and low income groups. And there are mitigation points, but we've chosen to ignore them all. I think that's inappropriate. And I think this council should relook at proposal 7 in great detail. The report talks about without proposal 7, we won't hit the savings in this particular arena. So it looks like that change is just being done so that that savings target is achieved, and there's no consideration whatsoever given to the impact on families. We have an anti-poverty strategy and it's coming up later in the day, and I'm a massive advocate for that, and I'm very supportive of the successes that we've received so far. But this completely ignores that. The community impact assessment doesn't look at the poverty impacts at all on increasing something by £400 a year in the current climate. 73% of people objected. So effectively, we're ignoring the residents' comments in the consultation and ignoring the mitigations that are available as part of the equality impact assessment. I'd strongly ask you to reconsider that particular point. I think it has a negative impact on people, and our own report demonstrates that negative impact. Finally, we promised previously, as part of the anti-poverty strategy oversight group, that we would have full anti-poverty mitigation statements in these reports, and it's not here. And this is a prime example of where it should be and where we could have analysed the impact it was going to have and done something about it in a different location. It's a real mistake for me for that not to be there. Genuinely would ask Cabinet to reconsider that particular proposal in this report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. Councillor Stone, Danielle.
Thank you, Chair. I'm struggling with this report because I think it's based around the work for it, and the report is based around needs driven by budget, not needs driven by children, households and logic. I was hoping that after 10 years of not having had a review, that we would have had a review that laid out for us exactly what the needs were, would present a business case for an in-house service where we take profit out of what we're doing so that the seat price becomes cheaper, that we keep a grip on routes and on capacity and on entitlement, and we deliver it ourselves in such a way that we could also service daytime needs for adult social services. So to say I'm disappointed is a bit of an understatement. I don't understand why that work hasn't been done. And I still would like to see a business case for an in-house service, because I would like to know what the true cost per seat is, not the cost plus profit. I want to know what the actual cost of a seat is. I know for an absolute fact that we do not have the capacity to monitor 100 contracts. So if we've got 100 providers, that already tells me that we're going to be allowing less than perfect practice, because we haven't got the capacity to monitor that. I think the hike from who on earth agreed that? A hike from 600 to £1,000 is a tax on parents. And it's outrageous. Our parents are already paying high council tax. They need proper return for that. They shouldn't be being taxed again for something that their children badly need. For households with more than one children, this is going to be an impossibility. And we're going to be seeing more and more children not going to school as a result of that. I also want to take issue with what the exemptions to deemed unsafe are. I think they need to be looked at again. When children are telling me all the time that they don't feel safe going to school, they don't feel safe walking to school, they don't feel safe coming back. What's making them not safe? Isolation is one of them. Overhanging hedges is one of them. The fear of predators is another one. Uneven pavements is another one. All of that, lighting. We need to be listening to our children and taking their fears of being unsafe seriously. This isn't doing that at all. And I would also like to say in here that I have raised time and time again the safety issues around traveller children walking from where they live to where they go to school along a main road with no paths, no verges, with cars speeding. So I'm hoping that at least one of the things that might be coming out of this review is a way of getting those children to school safely, and yes, by transporting them. I would like Councillor Larratt to have a look at that issue for me, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Councillor Harris. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say the comment about we've listened to what parents have to say, I think that's been very selective, particularly on the point about the proposed increase from 600 to £1,000. I have to say this issue has probably been the largest generation of email inbox for me in the most sort of 2 or 3 months when the consultation was live. And we all accept that there is a problem and there is an issue. And I would agree with the comments made. This is a tax on parents. It feels to me like it's also a tax on rural parents in particular. We cannot accept or expect children to walk 2 or 3 miles in some rural locations. It's just simply not safe enough. Many roads don't have any pavements whatsoever. The road speeds are fast. It's dangerous. It's plainly dangerous. It's not clear in the report. I think the number or the comment was made that it's a very small number. Well, 144 pupils and 24 SEND pupils to me is not a small number. That doesn't also give us any indication what the projected future numbers might be. It's also not clear where they are located, and I think that's quite significant. There's some debate or comment in the report about spread it over 2 years, spread it over 1 year, and the option is to go for 1 year. That's a 66% increase. I cannot see how that is justified in this current climate. We have families who are now facing 6 and 7% mortgage rates as of today. They could even get worse. And if they fix at that point, they're stuck with it for 3 or 4 years, possibly even more. It seems entirely contrary to the wellbeing strategy, which states thriving childhood, access to best available education and learning. It's also has been mentioned entirely contrary to the anti-poverty strategy. I wonder what the council's plan is when we start to see parents who simply cannot afford this withdrawing their children from school. What exactly do we do then? Do we start fining them for not going to school? I would ask seriously that the Cabinet reconsider that particular point of 7 under the recommendation of 600 to £1,000. It seems entirely untenable to me. We all accept that there's a problem, but that problem exists because I believe this has not been reviewed actually since 2010, so 13 years, not 10 years. That's why we have the problem. It's basically the fault of past administrations to not have looked at this and got a grip on it in the past. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Finally, Councillor Randall. Wendy, you're okay. Jolly good. Phil, a few points you might want to comment on there. Do you want to come back on some of those?
Thank you, Chairman. I find it amazing that I go to a council meeting and I sit in a council meeting and we have the opposition baying for money, baying for money for knife crime, baying for money for more potholes, and yet we come to a meeting here where there is a significant overspend in our school transport budget, which we're trying to bring back under control, and yet nobody prepared to face up to that and come up with a suggestion as to what to do other than not to increase the cost. Mr. Chairman, we are dealing here, we're talking here about 168 young people. We're not talking a lot of people. It is a service that is one that we don't have to provide, and it's up to parents to decide whether they use the service or use some other method of how to get to their children to school. Yes, it is a significant cost increase. I wouldn't deny that. It's £400 a year. But at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, as has just been said, it's over a decade since this cost was agreed, and it's only fair and right that we review it. And yes, I think we have to take appropriate action to rectify the situation. We know the indications are that the true cost at this present day is £1,040, and we are still subsidising the fare as we're only looking to charge £1,000. I can't help the fact that it's over a decade since that it's been looked at, but we have a significant problem where the homeschool transport budget is way overspent by over £5 million a year, and we've got to bring that under control. And it's only right that we deliver what is our statutory responsibility. So I defend the increase. It has minimal impact in some respects because it's very few children in the overall scheme of things. And I hear what Councillor Stone says about safety, and I suggest that she reads Appendix D of the report, which sets out the criteria for safer working. So, Mr. Chairman, I think we have to bite the bullet on this. Homeschool transport is way overspent. We must bring it back into line, and I support the recommendations within the report, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Adam, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, just to acknowledge some of the mitigations that have been built into the policy post-consultation. It's going to be particularly appreciated in rural areas where a huge swathe of children and families would have been subject to an extra charge to go to the secondary school most associated with their village had we not built in the mitigation. And this is most certainly not a tax on parents or anything of the sort. I know that the Labour Party like calling things that aren't taxes, but you know, the policy clearly sets out that people will continue to get free home to school transport if they go to their geographically associated or nearest school. That's going to continue. There'll be grandfather rights in terms of eligibility for current pupils. So there are a huge number of protections built into the policy. And Councillor Longley said it under one of the finance items at the top of this meeting. It has to come from somewhere. If we're going to have a balanced budget, if we're going to balance our books, then we have to take tough decisions such as this. We can't fall into the trap of constantly criticising the building in of contingencies into our budget, opposing the use of reserves, which we would always oppose, but then at the same time opposing every further revenue stream that comes forward, and yet at the same time demanding huge investments. You know, that is simply not a way to run an efficient or practical council. That's a recipe for financial disaster, Mr. Chairman. And you know, I think that what we have, it will be a tough choice. You know, it will be unpalatable to many, but it has to come from somewhere, and this budget has to be balanced. So I would agree with the recommendations before us.
Thank you, Adam. Fiona, you going to comment?
I just wanted Councillor Larratt to perhaps clarify the SEND children that will be affected. It was my understanding that SEND children were not going to be adversely affected by this report. So I see that you've got 24 children on your list of SEND that are going to be affected by this. Can you just clarify what that means?
Answer. Oh, Stuart's more available. He's looking it up right now. So
okay.
So the strategy, and again, it's about a common sense approach and working with parents, etc. In light of the conversation we just had on the strategy. So what the policy currently states is where a pupil is attending their nearest suitable school and they have a condition where they cannot reasonably expected to walk, and this support is supported by appropriate medical and specialist advice, then the council will always make the transport arrangements. So it's based on the opportunity, if you like, or the issues of case by case basis. But generally, it's supporting SEND children getting to school.
Okay, thank you. And I understand there is some sort of part payment mitigation for. I understand fully that you have got to make these changes and.
Yeah, payments will be accepted on a termly basis.
Thank you.
Good. Any further comments on this at all? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Phil. Recommendations, as always, are, I think, at section 3. Can I ask you to confirm your agreement to those recommendations, please? Is it agreed? Thank you very much. That's good. Takes on to item 13, still with Phil. Phil introduced this, then we've a few speakers. We have Jean Lineker, followed by Councillor Randall and Councillor Harris. Phil, over to you. Additional
Thank
budget.
you, Chairman. A really good news paper. This is all about purchasing equipment to enable us to be more efficient in our highways maintenance and repairs work. The council has actually ordered 2 new pieces of machinery to improve the efficiency of highways maintenance activity, in particular small areas of patching. The machinery will be used to increase the common sense approach to dealing with potholes in that it allows Kia to patch small areas of road which often contain a number of potholes closer together, some of which may not have reached the intervention level. So it's going to really help us address that rather than just filling individual potholes that have. It will also be used to carry out preventative maintenance that will reduce the number of potholes that form on the network, particularly when you start to see the degradation of the highway, where we can actually address that before it becomes a serious issue. The thermal road repair machine has already been delivered and will be working across West Northamptonshire from later this week, and the JCB Pothole Pro is expected to be delivered in September. We've already got one of the thermal road repair machines and we've been using that for a long time, and I had a very complimentary email from King's Sutton Parish Council actually about a repair that the machine was used on in the village only last week. So it is having these machines do have impact. The report seeks to agree an additional capital budget of £450,000 to fund these purchases rather than having to reduce the in-year capital programme. This project is an invest to do more project in that the increased capacity of the machinery will enable a greater area of road to be treated each year, and so will aid in reducing the decline of the road network. I hope you note my words there. Cabinet, Mr. Chairman, is asked to note the contents of the report and endorse the decision taken to purchase the machinery and to agree to allocate an additional capital budget of £450,000 to fund the purchase. And I look forward to the arrival of the JCB Pothole Pro, because I think it, having been and seen it, I think it's got great potential to help us deliver more for less, but a quality job at the same time. Thank you.
Jolly good. Thanks, Phil. Let's bring our speakers in. Mrs. Lineker, Jean, you're the first one. If you're able to get across there. And on the microphone, there's a button in the middle that you need to press. Yep. You're welcome to come back. You've got another slot on another report, haven't you? You're welcome to come back for that one. No, we do need the microphone, because if you're watching at home on YouTube, you can't hear without it. It's just the button in the middle there. Can you see the button that's got the, that's it.
Right, the first thing I want to talk about is the highway thing. And I've been told by Mr. Hanson, it's going to the highway project, like, you know, for the unitary. All I'm asking you to do, I didn't get this letter though from Nick Henstock, Director of Highways and Transport. I didn't get the letter that he got, Andrew Lua, about the system of the effects that were gonna, I didn't get this from him. There was not, it was not sent to me. Okay, this was sent to Andrew Lua, and I've got a copy now, so thank you very much. The other one is on housing. I'm astounded that that you got down here migration. Is that the people that are coming over in the boat, in hotels? Or you see, the ones I'm on about on housing is that overcrowdedness in some flats. One of them was a good friend of mine, Michael Boss. His son is overcrowded, but I learned today he's going to be allocated another property. So thank God for that. Right, and he's been He's got his 2 children, all in 1 bedroom with them. Another thing is sections 21 on private housing. Is there any provision for these people to go into housing? 2 friends of mine are living in private accommodation. Now, one lives near me. He's 69 years old. He's already had his S21. He's now waiting for someone to come and check him out. He has 2 dogs and he's got a wife with COPD. So how long is it before they be able to get a place? Because they've been told they've got no chance and they'll have to go into a homeless by housing when they went down there at the one-stop shop. They have written to Andrew Lewis, and Andrew Lewis' secretary is going to deal with it. They said, you've got to stay there. When you get a sections 21, because I don't understand this, I had to wait 9 years for my bungalow, and thank God for Brian Bingley, because he got me the property for my husband and me. I don't want this to happen to those on the housing list. Please, can you stick by the housing list? Or is that going to change in now?
Shall we, what we're doing is we thought it was perhaps polite
Section
to let you
21.
drift across the
S21.
various different subjects rather than come back. I think Adam's made a good note, Jean, and I know you're in occasional
I
contact.
did try and contact him the other day, but he was unavailable.
Yeah, I think he's got a grip of the key things. I think what we ought to do now is we ought to stick to the item, if you like, that we're on, which is the budget for the machinery. If you want to come back on
the
others.
machinery.
But I think Adam's taken some very careful notes, and I think he'd come back to you on those housing
I could only talk
points.
on one item, I've been told. So I thought I'd do it within 3 minutes.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, that's appreciated. You could have come back. I think Adam's got the points now. I'm also going to suggest actually that after this one, we take a 10-minute break. So perhaps Adam will catch a quick word with you then and make sure that he's got all your points to save you having to come back.
I just want a response from my 2 friends. I don't want them to be homeless. Not at 69 and COPD and a lot of illnesses.
No, of course you don't.
Sorry, but
No, it's okay.
close to my heart. And I don't want that to happen.
We're going to ask.
And I'm not sure whether it's happening elsewhere, because a lot of private tenants are giving up, private landlords are giving up their houses now because of the pricing increase.
We're very aware of that too. Adam might actually, you're going to make a quick comment then, Adam, then we'll get to answer some of Jean's comments and then we'll get back on track with the machinery.
Sorry, Adam, I did try and get over.
No, that's okay, Jean. So when a section 21 eviction notice is issued to private tenants and the council are notified of that, then what we'll do is we'll verify that the section 21 notice is valid. And then if we can confirm that an eviction and a home becoming homelessness is imminent, then temporary accommodation will be offered as a first step until permanent accommodation can be offered. Now, an offer of permanent accommodation will be subject to where people are ranked on.
They've got to put all their furniture in storage. That's going to cost them.
Unfortunately, I can't discuss an individual case in public like this, I'm afraid. I'm more than happy to talk to you outside the room, or we can have a phone call tomorrow. But that's broadly the process that we follow. Once people are in temporary accommodation, they'll be assessed as to their housing need and they'll be allocated a property according to their need, in line with our normal policy that we're going to be reviewing later on tonight. But if you want to pick up the phone to me tomorrow, we can discuss the individual case as far as possible. I have to respect
I'm just worried about
certain legal guidelines about privacy of
and
information.
I'm worried about other people with sections S21.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it until I heard from them.
It's something we're very, very familiar with, Jean. It's all too common. We must now move on back. Thank you for your comments, and Adam will talk to you tomorrow. Coming back to the purchase of additional machinery, we had a couple of other people to speak. The next one was Councillor Randall. Wendy.
Is that it? No.
I think so, but thank you.
Thank you.
Adam, we'll talk to you tomorrow, Jean. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In June 22, Councillor Longley and Councillor Larratt signed off a deal with Kia Group worth £30 million over 7 years using delegated powers. The deal was said to lead to some cost advantages and was guaranteed as providing value for money. Yet since the council has already had to fund an additional 1 million and an extra 1.8 million from government for the purchase of improving the condition of the roads, I thought that the purchase of that machinery was within that 1 million. And I think quite a lot of other councillors saw that as well. So I was quite surprised actually to see this report. So in Companies House, it states that the Kia Group has a current net worth of 345 million and last year made a total revenue of 3.3 billion. And yet this council is going to purchase a piece of machinery on their behalf effectively, even though it is ours. And someone said to me, when you hire a builder, you don't buy his drills. You know, when we went out for this contract, they knew that they were going to be repairing potholes. So, and I already alluded to in council that they're already way below the standards that they should be hitting. So why, you know, it's good to have a piece of machinery that's actually going to improve the repairing of the potholes, but I really don't understand why we have to purchase that piece of machinery and why they aren't purchasing that piece of machinery to help them move up the scale of their grading so as they don't have to incur any penalties.
We can probably answer this if we're just going to go around circles on the same one, Wendy.
And the other
We
thing
own
is-
all the capital equipment, I think, don't we? We
Right,
own all the
okay.
britters, we own all the diggers or whatever else they use. So it's simple as that, Wendy. On to the next one though.
Right, so then on 7.6.1, it says that the use of the TRR machine will reduce the environmental impact and it will reuse all material on site. Now, I thought that we used a 50-50 ratio at the moment on reused and new material. So I'd be interested to know how this piece of machinery is going to change and improve that ratio to make it that all material will be reused. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Harris. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. So my first point, of course, any opportunity to improve the quality and the regularity of our roads and with repairs is obviously welcome. I have a frustration, though, currently, which links to this particular point. The report talks about, there's a particular quote that says analysis of best practice elsewhere has identified that the purchase of additional machinery which focuses on large-scale patching will have long-term benefit on productivity. It doesn't say what that is. There's no clarity around that. And having obviously looked at this particular machine, it is clear that there are variances of views and perspectives on what it may or may not bring. So my first question is, can we be absolutely transparent about what it does once it starts being implemented? I think we'd all be very interested to have a real understanding of what that productivity looks like, so we have a real sense and a real handle on that. And the second point is about the irregularity of repairs. I quite often get comments from residents and photos which shows that quality is still not being monitored terribly well. So my fear is we'll have a lovely shiny new piece of kit which does the job quickly, but will we still have issues with quality? So again, it's a point just to make sure we close that loop. I have to echo Councillor Randall's point. It's a philosophical point. And I won't repeat all of the statistics that Councillor Randall's referred to, but it does seem a bit odd that we are funding, whether or not we own all of the other capital equipment is a moot point. But I do note that Kier has a quite a large debt issue, and maybe that has something to do with it. Perhaps they can't actually get the funding for kit like this, but it does seem to me rather strange when we know that capital is a key point for the council for other issues and other funds. There are plenty already on the list. There are plenty that I'm sure we could come up with that we continue to fund what effectively is their day-to-day tools. So I accept it's a philosophical point. We will have different views on it. But to me, with an organisation the size of Kier, it does seem rather strange. Thank you.
Okay, generally good. Thank you, Jonathan. Phil, did you want to pick up on any of those points?
Yeah, can I just first of all say I'm pleased Jean's got that response. I'm sorry it took so long, but at least you got the response. That's the main thing. The purchase of equipment, it's something that has been going on for a long time. For example, all the refuse trucks that are used by Veolia in Northampton belong to this council. As the decision was made that at the time that the contract was let, that the authority would purchase that equipment. We've already, the county council, purchased 2 thermal road repair machines. And when we became a unitary council, one came to us and one went to the north. So we've decided to buy another one. I mean, at the end of the day, they are our equipment, and the asset remains with us. There is a business case that was submitted, and that was considered at Capital Assets Board today as well, where we looked at the details of the productivity. We were given details of how that would work and what was in the business case, and it was very positive. So we have very closely looked at productivity, the business case, etc. So I think it's fair to say that that's been thoroughly investigated. We could have, we've got £2.8 million, 1 million from this authority, 1.8 from government. We could, of course, have used that to purchase the machinery, but at the end of the day, wouldn't it be better to actually spend that on doing the work that the public want to see? And if we can utilise modern technology to deliver more for that 2.8 million, isn't that better for the public? Isn't that better for the road users, etc.? So, you know, I'm very pleased that we've managed to buy this as an authority without impeding on the funds that we've set aside or that we've got for actual works on the road. And hopefully as a result of that, the people of West Northamptonshire will see improvements. We see better repairs actually happening out on the street. And I have to say that quality is very, very important. Of course, there will still be emergency potholes or potholes that will have to be filled on an emergency basis, where somebody will go around and fill it very quickly and not to a very good standard, but at least it will be fixed until a proper repair can be made in however many days' time that may be. So you will still, unfortunately, see that sort of thing. But, you know, we will, at the end of the day, be able to go along and do a far better quality job using this equipment. As I say, looking at the job that was done in King Sutton, I think that was a fantastic bit of work, looking at the photographs that I've seen of that. And I know in Northampton, thanks to Councillor Stone, there was one done, repaired very close to my house in Northampton a few years ago using that. And it's really, really held out superbly. So quality is important, and I'm very sure that this new equipment will deliver that quality, will deliver more repairs, and will be enable the residents of West Northamptonshire to see that we are actually doing our best to deliver what they want. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the vote shortly, but a quick comment for you, Malcolm.
Yes, anybody that's listened to me on the finance side know that I've been banging on about productivity for years and will continue to do so. At the CAB meeting this morning, as Phil quite rightly refers to, we naturally asked the question about productivity, always would. And the payback on this kit is we get our money back in 1 year. Now, that's pretty good. In fact, it's absolutely excellent. And my only criticism was, we're only buying these, why aren't we buying more? So that's where I stand on this one. One of the best investments I've seen for a long time.
Thanks, Malcolm. Stuart, you're going to add a couple of comments?
I was asked by Councillor Larratt to answer the technical questions, which is always a challenge for me, but here goes. The question was asked about the recycling of the product and why this was 100%. What the thermal machine does is it takes up the tarmac, recycles 100% the tarmac, adds extra to it to fill the hole. So it's a quirk of this particular, or an advantage of this particular machine, is that every bit of the planings, if you like, is reused in that particular vicinity. Councillor Larratt has also asked me to organise a members' day up at Kia so that members can actually see the machines and ask the more technical questions of the experts. So again, that is going in the diary very soon. And again, that invite will be there for all members to come and view the machinery and ask questions of Kia. Final point would be that during mobilisation, some of there were issues identified in terms of meeting the monitoring side of things. The latest monitoring is saying that they're hitting all targets as we expected to at that particular time. So they really are starting to step up and meet the objectives of the contract as we're going forward. So just a few points there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. That's helpful to know. Right. Any further comments on this one at all? No? Okay. Let me direct Cabinet's attention to the recommendations of section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm agreement? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. I'm going to suggest we have a very quick break. It's 10 past now. It's just after 10 past, possibly. Maybe if we can get back by about 20 past, be well underway by 25 past. We're just over the halfway mark, folks. Thank you. On to item 14. This is library service strategy. Adam will introduce in a second. Three speakers, councillors Purser, Stone and Beardsworth. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a positive paper to bring forward. It's about the future of our libraries service in West Northamptonshire. This is due to go out to an 8-week consultation following the hopeful approval here this evening. When that document does go out for consultation, there will be some minor amendments to the document before us tonight. The photo of me on there needs to be cropped so there's no party political regalia on show. The map showing the locations of libraries across Northamptonshire will be amended to show an inset map of Northampton to make it clearer where the Northampton libraries are. And there's also a slight misnomer on page 15. It refers to the Equalities Act when it's the Equality Act 2010. Beyond that, Chairman, that we have the recommendations before us that this will allow the library service to deliver and maximise its role in the delivery of various WNC corporate priorities. It also lends support to the community managed libraries, and I just want to pay particular tribute to the volunteers who are serving in those community managed libraries. With very few exceptions, they are all volunteers. They give up their time to provide a service to communities who would otherwise have lost their libraries under the cuts that Northamptonshire County Council had to impose back in the day. And I'm delighted that over the past couple of years, we've seen St James Library reopen, and now Kingsthorpe Library is on the cusp of reopening as a community managed library. The aims and ambitions within this strategy are deliverable with or without the mooted disaggregation of the library service within Northamptonshire. But the key areas that we're seeking to deliver on are as follows. There are 7 priority areas. They are increased reading and literacy, cultural and creative enrichment, largely delivered via greater links to the museum service and a bit of a roadshow of museum artefacts around the district with particular relevance to the local areas that they're visiting. So, for example, display about Brackley history in Brackley Library, celebrating all that is beautiful and brilliant about Brackley. Improved digital access and literacy via the various digital media that the libraries are able to offer. Healthier and happier lives, promoting knowledge about health issues and acceptance of those, helping everyone achieve their full potential. Greater prosperity, which is being driven in large part by the BIPC, which is the Business and Intellectual Property Centre. We're supported in that endeavour by the British Library. And then finally, stronger and more resilient communities. We've seen plenty of our libraries open their doors as warm spaces over the past 6 months, or well, past year or so. Not just the statutory libraries under the management of West Northamptonshire Council, but again, those community managed libraries run by volunteers. So I commend the strategy indeed to Cabinet, and I hope it receives full support, but look forward to any constructive comments coming our way.
That's lovely. Thank you, Adam. That's great. So 3 speakers. First of all, Councillor Purser. Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This paper came to scrutiny, and we heard many of the excellent things that are going on in our libraries, but we also recognise the difficult financial climate under which our libraries have existed, and you've just recognised that they've faced huge cuts in recent years. Again, this strategy is saying a lot about efficiencies and making best use of the limited resources they're getting. I would hope that we could have a more aspirational view of our libraries in the future. And really, they can be real hubs and opportunities in our communities. They can be they're an important gateway for people accessing IT and e-books. That's certainly true. But paper books are important as well. And we've seen a growth back from the e-book movement towards people having real books and really enjoying reading. And I think our libraries need to support that. So we need to be bringing books in to encourage reading. And libraries can make a real impact on our young people, especially those who are developing a real interest in learning, perhaps those who don't learn well in schools, but libraries are the place where they can discover that love of learning and reading. And our libraries can play a key role in that. So libraries are not just for the under fives and mums, but also for teenagers who perhaps it's their way into learning. And I would encourage that role for our libraries. So I just hope as we approve this strategy, it will encourage us to have more ambition for our libraries in the future as a real symbol that we're about a learning community in West Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your comments, Bob. So next we have Councillor Stone, Danielle.
Thank you, Chair. I think that libraries, along with parks, are the most democratic of all our institutions, aren't they? Because they're open access and they welcome everybody in and try to meet the needs of everybody. So I really love libraries. I'm in Central Library every week because Northampton Town of Sanctuary runs ESOL classes there. And it's the most wonderful setting for ESOL classes because, of course, we join everybody up to the library, and after their class, they go and choose their books and spend time in the library. But there are issues, aren't there? And resource is one of the issues. So I take women with little children occasionally to Play and Stay or whatever they're called. They're always over full and oversubscribed, and they've got waiting lists, you know, and that is a bit of a blow to parents who need somewhere to take their little ones, and maybe it's first-time mothers who also need the comfort and support of other parents occasionally. So I think there are definitely resourcing issues, and one of the things I'm a bit apprehensive about is our over-reliance on volunteers. We seem to be doing it more and more. In actual fact, I've just looked up the job of a librarian. It's fantastic. The job of a qualified librarian is really, really important. And we are missing that in a lot of our libraries, you know, because access to knowledge and information is access to power, it seems to me. And we need people in the libraries who aren't just kind and helpful, but who've got that kind of level of expertise as well. So I think we need to reflect on that. I know that the volunteers in our libraries are doing the most amazing job, and I really thank them for that. But they also do need proper resourcing, you know, and we need to not over rely on their goodwill to produce the goods. Libraries are community hubs. They're really well used. When I went round Central Library last week, I saw the most enormous amount of different activities going on, from academic study to job searches to literacy classes like mine to parenting stuff. Really, really, really important. We need to be looking after them better. One of the issues I'm a bit concerned about is the condition of the buildings. So I'm going to ask when and if we've ever had a buildings survey of all our library buildings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Come on to your comments. Councillor Beardsworth, Sally.
Thank you, Chair. A lot's been said, very good things about libraries tonight, and I agree with all that's been said before. The reason I'm going to sort of drill down with this, I think, is that we have missed a trick in the strategy as regards making community hubs of all our libraries. They are community hubs now, but we could extend that service and make it much more a practical resource. The other thing I'll touch on is the climate impact. I'm sure you're all aware that last June was the hottest June across the world, and the ice cap has suffered dramatically because of that. We can't ignore global warming anymore, and it's libraries that have the responsibility to actually educate people about how they can help with climate change and sustainability and provide opportunities to connect with people, enabling to explore these local issues. If we can help people understand about global warming, that's a huge thing. We're really pleased I've got Kingsthorpe Library in here, and I'm just wondering if we've got an end date to the lease work, because it seems to have taken an awful long time. And we're really keen to get, the parish council's really keen to get in there and working for the community, getting people in. Reading is such an escapist exercise. It's better than television because you use your imagination. And if we can get children to read at any age, you know, or adults, you can lose yourself in a book, and it must help with mental health issues. So libraries are essential. We need them desperately, but I'd really like to see Kingsthorpe Library opened as soon as possible because we're desperate for that. I won't go on, I'm still on amber.
Very good. Thank you, Sally. Adam, did you want to pick up on any of those comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just on the last point, one of the last points raised by Councillor Beardsworth, and the duty to inform and educate about climate change. I've been desperately searching for the page number. I know it's in there somewhere. So you know that commitment's there, as is a very firm commitment to having you know, books that represent all sorts of different views. You know, an avoidance of censorship and embrace of different values and ideas. That's one of the key points about libraries. And you know, we've heard a lot of lovely things about our libraries and just how important they are. And I couldn't agree more. They are an absolute cornerstone of education and opportunity for people of all ages. Councillor Purser mentioned you know, extending library opportunities for older children. I think the priority one around reading and literacy mentions specifically adult reading. I think it should be interpreted as being reading aimed at people of all ages. So the intent is certainly not to exclude anybody, even if it's by implication. We are aiming to capture people at any and every age. Councillor Purser mentioned efficiencies and making the most of what we've got. I don't see anything wrong in that. I think that's a fine ambition to have. And if we reach the stage where there's the option to invest more in our libraries, you won't find a stronger advocate for that than me. But we have to recognise the realities of what we've got to deal with at the moment. And if people want to see specific extra investments in libraries and they're able to tell us where they think we can find the money, then we'll be all ears. Paper books, absolutely. And there is a firm commitment to continuing to improve, update, expand the stock of physical books, not just rely on digital media on the assumption that that's where everybody's going. There's a stack of physical books on my desk at work and a whole load of physical books at home. I tried Kindles for a little while, didn't get on with them. I like the feel of a book in my hand, as many people do. Councillor Stone mentioned some of the fantastic events that go on in our libraries, and she's right to do so. This strategy sets out a firm commitment to continue those sorts of events, to encourage people into our libraries, but also simply to make the most of the spaces and, you know, capitalise on them as potential community hubs and free or you know, cheap venues to operate those sorts of groups from. So it's good to hear that positive feedback from people. Councillor Bearsworth mentioned Kingsthorpe Library. The last update I had was that the lease was with the parish council again for confirmation. If her understanding is different, then she's welcome to get in contact with me, but that update wasn't very long ago. So I hope that's current, and I hope to see the doors reopen to Kingsthorpe Library shortly. I know that there have been physical improvements to the building. We've gone in and we've carried out some repairs and some aesthetic upgrades to the building in preparation for that opening. So we look forward to seeing that. And with that, I'll just say, if anyone has any further ideas, just remember that this is going out to consultation. Everybody, councillors, members of the public alike, will have the opportunity to feedback on this strategy.
Jolly good. Thank you, Adam. Does anybody have any further comments on this at all? No? Okay, in which case, as always, section 3 has the recommendations. Can you confirm your agreement, please? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 15, again with Adam, West Northants Housing Allocations Policy, approval to commence formal consultation. Once Adam's introduced, we have 3 speakers, Councillors Roberts, Purser and Randall. Adam, up to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep this brief because we touched on the issue earlier when Councillor Grant came along to present the scrutiny findings, and I would draw members' members' attention to recommendation B at 3.1. It delegates authority to me to make any changes to the scheme prior to the start of the consultation. So those recommendations from scrutiny will be adopted and incorporated into the draft strategy before that consultation. I'd reflect again on the importance of the approach taken by scrutiny and not coming forward with a load of recommendations to bump huge cohorts further up the list, because by doing so you lose the whole ethos of the hierarchy of need that we try to create within a housing allocations policy. I recognise, and I encounter it on a weekly, if not more frequent basis, that this is a hugely emotive issue. And I was only saying to officers this morning that every case that crosses my desk, I sympathise with and I can empathise with. Unfortunately, we have to be, in creating policy and applying policy, we have to be somewhat dispassionate and think about the people who aren't necessarily talking to us, the silent majority on the waiting list who have identified needs and who are waiting for somewhere to call a home of their own. And that's what this policy sets out to do. Again, very happy to listen to any further feedback on the draft policy, but with the caveat that, again, this is going out to consultation, a consultation that will target people who have previously applied for social housing or who are social housing tenants. So there will be a real effort to target that key demographic who may have greater insight into the appropriateness or otherwise of the housing allocations policy.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much indeed. Let's take our speakers. First, Councillor Roberts. Emma.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be pleased to know, Adam, I'm not coming with a list of people I think should move up their criteria. I'm really looking forward to this policy going out to people, and I urge as many people as possible out there in the community to respond to this consultation, because we have absolutely got to see how the merger of these housing allocations policies is going to impact people. So my questions really are around, have we identified the number of people that will be potentially negatively impacted by the merger of the process? So, for example, when we merge to one allocations policy, will people be rebanded, and therefore will somebody have been on the waiting list for a very long time in one particular area, but now be in a lower criteria to someone who's been on a waiting list for a shorter period of time in another area? I don't know the answer to that, and I'd like to see some analysis on that as part of the outcomes of this process. And then I have got two, please. At 7.22.5, because it's a big document of the draft policy, there's talk of the effective date, and the effective date changing if your banding increases. And I realise that that's quite a normal situation, that if your banding improves, your effective date changes. But that can have quite negative consequences on an individual who's been in the lower band for a very long period of time. So firstly, I'd like us, if you can, to amend that to explain the effective date to people in some more detail there in that part of the policy, and for us to genuinely consider whether or not that will have a detrimental impact on those who we're rebanding. And then the other one is, when it came to people scrutiny before the scrutiny panel split, we had quite a long conversation. The report didn't, obviously, but the concept of the housing allocations changes came. And we had a long discussion about the overcrowding situation, and overcrowding, sort of statutory overcrowding versus, I'll use the term social overcrowding, whether that's the correct term or not, remains to be seen. But I see so many people who I believe are overcrowded but don't meet the statutory requirement. And I know that we could shift that in our policy. Now, I know that negatively impacts other areas and potentially move somebody else off the arena. But I asked at the time whether we'd done some significant analysis on the number of people, particularly in Northampton Partnership Homes, who we deemed to be socially overcrowded rather than statutory overcrowded. And if we had we genuinely looked at whether or not that group of people would be more adversely impacted than another. And I can't see anything in here, Adam, that tells me that. So I'd really like to see that as part of the outcomes, but really encourage people to respond. I appreciate it's a difficult job, and I genuinely appreciate the officer work. And I also think the scrutiny position on this has been really good, and it's great to see you accept those recommendations. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Emma. Bob, over to you.
Yes, I'd like also to welcome the the document, the work that's gone into it, the contribution from officers and members and from people consulted with in the development of it. My question is really just about the consultation process and how we're going to make sure that the people that this policy most affects are going to be able to engage with the consultation that goes on. I think that's a very difficult issue, and hope that thought has been given as to how that will happen. How do people who have recently been allocated houses, people who have recently not been allocated or find themselves further down the list, how are we going to make sure that those people get their views heard? And I suppose we just have to bear in mind the context, which is with 4,000 people on the housing list and the very limited numbers that come on, we are in a very difficult process in this area, and it is rationing what is a very basic human right. Housing is a basic human right, and the fact we're rationing it is difficult for us all, I think.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for your comments. Finally, Councillor Randall, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, this is quite a big change. I think that Daventry and South Northants were quite similar in the amount of earnings that you had to be eligible, because I think they were both 60,000, but Northampton was 40. So, and they're raising the bar to 60. So are you expecting a real influx of people now to be joining the housing register that weren't on there before? And the other real big difference was that I found quite shocking, actually, when I spoke to Northampton councillors, when I realised this, that in Northampton, your lounge is deemed as, it can be used as a bedroom, where Daventry and South Northants, your living room is a living room and isn't allocated as a bedroom. So, so by bringing the scheme all together, I mean, there is a lot of pages to read, and obviously this has been a big document, so excuse me if I've missed that bit, but I just wondered, now we're pulling it all together, what's going to happen with the lounge? Is it going to stay the same in Northampton and can still be used as a bedroom, or is it going to go the same way as Daventry and South Northampton, not be used as a bedroom? And if that's the case, then that's going to have significant problems, create significant problems. And the only other issue that I saw was quite concerning, and that was with an applicant who has at least one dependent child living in accommodation where the facilities are shared with others not within the family. They will be moved from a band C to a band B, but I assume that's probably more in HIMOs, which I definitely would not want to let my child go to a bathroom when I don't know who else is living in that accommodation. You know, does that make them extremely vulnerable? I don't know, but that's, you know, that for me, you know, that was my concerns. Thank you.
Jolly good. Many thanks, Wendy. Adam, do you want to pick up on some of those comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So to address Councillor Roberts's point about how the merger will affect people and the modelling question. So as part of the process, where's Emma? So, as part of the process, we are going to do modelling of the impact on applicants. That's been built into the work that we're going to do during the consultation period. And taking Wendy's last point, one of Wendy's points about whether the lounge can be used as a bedroom. No, under the draft policy, the lounge would not be, or the living room would not be considered as a bedroom. So that's what we're going for under the draft policy as things stand. So you raised as well the £60,000 saving figure. I think so, earnings figure, my apologies. That's the government guidance on that. We don't believe that will cause a huge influx. Typically, people with high levels of savings, you know, don't tend to apply for social housing. They tend to have a preference for acquiring their own housing and satisfying their needs that way. Also on the child in the HMO question, the policy isn't suggesting that children or families should be in HMO accommodation, and indeed our temporary accommodation policy prefers self-contained accommodation for precisely that reason. We're simply, via a recommendation from scrutiny, trying to avert that sort of scenario from arising and trying to give a higher priority to people who may be in those circumstances. Running through the other points that were raised, so more than happy to ask officers to provide a further explanation on the effective date, as Councillor Roberts has requested. Also to look further at the effect of overcrowding definitions. I think that's vitally important. It's one that comes into my inbox fairly regularly, that question around overcrowding and eligibility for the housing register. And I think Councillor Purser raised the question of the rationing of housing, and much like the rationing of other finite resources, you either do it through cost or you do it through making people wait and prioritising them as fairly as possible. And we go with the latter, whilst at the same time working with registered providers, the housing associations and MPH to try and build as many properties as possible, as quickly as possible, to get people into the accommodation that they need. So that's where we are on that front, and yeah, look forward to hearing the consultation results once they're delivered to us.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. Just to clarify, I think that was a slip of the tongue. It's 60,000 earnings, not savings, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
There is also a limit on earnings, but I think that's 16,016.
I see.
Or around that amount. And yeah, clearly it's going to create additional eligibility, but I think, given rates of inflation, given the fact that we haven't reviewed these allocations policies, particularly in Northampton, for a little while, an increase in the earnings limits to the amount recommended by government is fair and equitable. £40,000 as a household income these days is not a huge amount, especially when you look at private rental costs. I had cause to look on Rightmove last night to look at what the cost of a private rented flat would be in Northampton, and the very cheapest that I could find on Rightmove, and there was only one, was £695 a month. More commonly, it's anywhere between about £850 and £1,000 for a one-bed flat, and obviously far in excess of that once you start looking at houses and additional bedrooms. So I do think it's the reasonable thing to do to give that uplift in line with the guidance that is given by government.
Jolly good. Thank you, Adam. Any other cabinet comments on this at all? No? Okay, in which case recommendations are at section 3. Of course, this has also had the input from what we picked up from scrutiny earlier, hasn't it? So subject to that, can I ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations? Is that agreed? Great, thank you very much. Takes us on to item 16. This one is with Matt. It's the report on the anti-poverty strategy, followed by which we have 3 speakers, Councillors Roberts, Stone and Beardsworth. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So first off, I just want to say I'm very proud that I've got some excellent work, couple of excellent areas of work going on in my portfolio, and this is as an example. And I also I'm going to say some positive things about the work that's been going on. But first of all, we've put a caveat in there that recognise the context that many families are struggling at the moment in our towns and in our rural areas, and the challenge to us is to try and do everything we can to try and help them. So, and also mention, as I often do when I refer to this piece of work, Leader, and to your credit, that you made it a priority for this administration when we first started to put in an anti-poverty strategy. And I'll just remind you of that. So the likes of myself and Stuart went away and had a look. We looked at a couple of areas, say we want to identify some best practice, pinch it, and try and make it better where we can. And I think to those ends so far, we're succeeding in that. And of course, that was just before what we now recognise as the cost of living crisis. So many members here and other council members take part in our anti-poverty oversight group, and I thank them for their contributions and their participation. As Cabinet knows, some Cabinet colleagues also attend the meetings. They take place with a number of our partners and our officers, and they're really seen as quite good, productive pieces of partnership work and collaboration. In fact, Rachel McGrath, she doesn't mind me quoting her because she often makes some very positive comments about the work that we do. Rachel McGrath, who's the CEO of the Northamptonshire Community Foundation, said to me that I do think that the West Northants anti-poverty strategy is an exemplar in strategic collaboration to tackle poverty locally and compared to other counties. And we thank you and the team for all of the hard work, and that goes to everybody that's involved. And there's lots of other comments. There's a couple contained within the report, and I actually asked that they were put in there so people can see what other people are saying about this work. So as a reminder, we originally set 3 strategic objectives around poverty. 1 was to support people who are struggling in poverty now. 2, to try and prevent people from falling into poverty in the first place. And 3, continue to try and influence government and other national organisations to get a better deal for the communities in West Northamptonshire. I think it's fair to say that, and on reflection of our first year, that we've really focused on that first objective. We've been trying to support people that are in poverty now. We've been quite reactive, and I think we've as a group, we recognise that we've been quite reactive, and part of the challenge for the next year and beyond is how we look at being a bit more sustainable in our approach. So if you look at the report and the information that we got here today, there's lots of other there's some good appendices and there's some other reports that have been to scrutiny. So if you want to get a better account of this piece of work than I'm able to do in the short time we've got now, have a look at, there's a set of slides there with loads of data, loads of information about the multitude of work that's dropped out of this group, which is fantastic. There are other links to other strategies. Acknowledge the point Emma made earlier, and that highlights the challenge that us as an administration have when we're talking about bringing in new strategies. But one I wanted particularly to highlight was Sally sitting next to me, the Director of Public Health. Her annual reports over the last year really focus, and that's appended as a part of the report set, really focus on poverty off the back of the anti-poverty work and the effect that has on people's health. And there's some really good information and data in there. Off the back of the first couple of meetings we had over 100 additional initial must-dos, which were formed into an action plan, and Vicky Rockall would report to us on how we're working around some of the challenges of those. So a huge amount happened, and we obviously tried the quick wins, what we could do to provide people with information. If you look on the website now, there's been a cost of living landing place there, going way back now, with a big which is a big gateway into lots of other advice and services. And there's been some really good progress against some of the other must-dos. We've set up something called a community training partnership, which is an idea to try and help our system that we've set up to try and train and help advise frontline workers and volunteers. We've had the Household Support Fund that we've reported on at Cabinet a number of times. We're on iteration 4 of that. We've tried to continuously learn and pick up better practice as we've gone through the different versions of that. We've had the fuel poverty work that we've worked on. There's the warm welcoming spaces that were incredibly popular. And the data, when I first heard it, between something like December and March this year, we had 53,000 odd visits, which is huge. And that, to me, that's 53,000 opportunities we've got to listen to people, to help direct them into other services. And, we talk about trying to prevent people to turn up at A&E or present at their GPs. And that's all those opportunities we can to try and help people and guide them and give them the advice advice that they need. And we're looking to keep on the welcoming spaces throughout the summer, because I'm sure everybody agrees it's warm enough now, and then learn from that exercise. And, you know, I'm sure we'll roll it out again better and bigger next year. Lots of money and debt advice, immigration support and advice, which came out as a big area that we need to try and get better out to help people, you know, get eligible and contribute to our economy here. Social mobility and employment and skills, look at how we can, you know, really help residents get in the advice they need around these. So lots gone on in year one. Around year two, we're developing another set of must-dos, and they're all contained in the report. I won't go through them all. But I did say, you know, we want to make sure we bring this strategy back to cabinet, back to council, be challenged on it, try and be transparent. Big thanks to Phil Vissy, who's helped put this report together, to Sally, to Stuart, to Vicky Rockall, and mainly our voluntary and community partners. I think it's a really good example of a collaborative piece of work. And like I said at the start, I'm very proud that it's within my portfolio, leader. So I'm happy to recommend it to council. Thank you.
Fantastic, Matt. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been it's a shared priority, wasn't it? Always has been. And I think the progress has been great. Let's move to our speakers then. First of all, Councillor Roberts. Emma.
Thank you, Chair. I've said it before and I say it again, this is a prime example of when a motion comes before council and council adopts a motion because it isn't quite perfect. It doesn't do everything that it says on the tin, but it's got potential to deliver for our residents. And you accepted that motion. And here we are now. And it is a really great progress and work that's been done collaboratively. I think it's really, really good. I think the way, and I've said it before, the way that Councillor Golby approaches it within the room means that we all have a say and we are all part of that project. So I'm very appreciative of that fact, and it works very well. It won't surprise you though, for that I'm going to say I don't think we've done enough yet. And the bit that I don't think we've done enough on is the putting money in people's pockets in the first place. We've said that we've got a commitment to paying the real living wage, not just the council, but across its services. We've got that commitment, but we're not taking any steps yet to work out what that looks like or how long that will take us to get there. I'm not suggesting for a second it's an overnight project, particularly in our social care sector. It will be a very long journey, but we're not starting to map that journey out yet. And we could be talking to the Living Wage Foundation about getting support with doing that, because they can help us. They can help us on a trajectory. And I truly and firmly believe we should be doing that now. It's not about the local authorities' pay. This is about pay outside of the local authority. I fully accept the work that we've done in respect of increasing wages there. But this is about our external partners, and the report committed to doing that. And then I'll bang on again about the anti-poverty strategy review for each cabinet paper, and having every cabinet decision, every council decision reviewed against the priorities within the anti-poverty strategy to see whether or not the decision that we are making negatively impacts that strategy or goes against the key objectives of that strategy. And that isn't me saying that we won't ever make a decision, because it does. That's me saying we'll cross-reference it, we'll check it, and we'll sense check it, and we'll mitigate against it wherever necessary, just like we would with an equality impact assessment. We promised it as part of the oversight board. It was a commitment that was given, and we haven't yet done it. And I think I must have mentioned it at almost every meeting I've been to. Please, let's do that. Let's have that actually working. But overall, I think the collaboration that's happened from this report and this piece of work and this directorate is really good. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your input, of course. Mike, you were just signaling there. I think it might have been around the living wage stuff and so on, but perhaps related to the council. Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely, around the real living wage stuff. Very few councils have actually signed up to Real Living Wage Foundation. I think it's about 3 or 4 the last time I checked. So there's a very low number. Oxford City Council, I think, are the highest paying authority outside of London. They've not signed up either. Why I mention that is because we're obviously, you're going to expect me to say this, but we're chasing Oxford down on the pay that they do, which is based on an Oxford wage, which is now obviously £11.60 an hour. A 30%, people talked about inflation earlier, we've had a 30% increase for our lowest paid since Vesting Day, which is obviously inflation busting. So I just cannot see the sense in signing up to a programme that currently commits people to paying £10.90 in any guise, when we pay £11.60. What we need to do is build out our own ambitions around that for suppliers and timelines and all that sort of good stuff, but around our own ambitions. Our ambitions are greater than just being a level that's set by other people. We're chasing down Oxford, as I say, highest paying authority outside of London, chasing those guys down. That's our ambition, is to be an employer of choice and to extend that out with all of the stuff we want to do amongst our suppliers. We're on that journey now. I just don't see the sense in signing up to something that takes us in a backward step.
I think it's a shared view. I know you do want to make a quick comment. One, just quickly.
Please, because I think for you to just pat yourself on the back over upping the wage when I've absolutely said that it's not about our wages. This is about wages elsewhere. At the moment, we've got a living wage foundation rate that we can measure ourselves against. Just because other authorities haven't signed up to it doesn't mean we shouldn't. And if we think we can do better than that with our procurement partners, genuinely, if we do, then let's create our own process out of the anti-poverty strategy that says anybody we procure will be paid better. So absolutely, let's do that. Thank you, Chair.
Just a quick last comment. Sorry, your mic. Oh, your mic's off, Mike. Sorry.
I know how council discussions go, and it will be, oh, well, we've agreed to do it at £10.90. Let's do the increase at £10.90, not to set our ambitions further. So that's my concern, that if you set the bar lower, people then will expect to hit that bar for suppliers and everyone, whereas actually our bar is higher and it will continue to remain higher as long as I'm in this post.
Let's okay, let's move on to the next speaker. Thanks, Emma, which is Councillor Stone. Danielle.
Thank you, Chair. The thing that I've liked most about the anti-poverty strategy is the way it was produced, actually. I think it was a very powerful way of bringing a collaboration together where people hadn't before particularly trusted the council. I think people trust the council an awful lot more now because they've been listened to and their ideas have been reflected in everything that's been done. And for me, it's created a bit of a difficulty because now I expect all strategies to be developed in that same way. And I'm a bit disappointed, to be honest, if they're not all as equally collaborative. But I think there are issues. So I think ameliorating poverty is one issue, and it's really obviously terribly, terribly important. Preventing it is something completely different. And it's one of the reasons why I keep saying at council meetings, we have got to fuel the local economy. We've got to both generate demand, but we've also got to put more money into the local economy. We have a huge amount of money in this local authority. Even if only half of it was kept locally, that would stimulate the local economy hugely, wouldn't it? And it would help take people out of poverty. And it seems to me that is something that we desperately need to do, keep our money local wherever we can. But the other issue is all the young people I know are going into dead-end jobs. Why? Because they're desperate for money. And what that's doing is lowering their ambition and their aspirations. And if we're not careful, we're producing a workforce that's going to be forever poor, because a lot of workers live on poverty wages, don't they? So call centres, logistics, all kinds of areas, Deliveroo. I'm sick to death of seeing young people I know doing Deliveroo work. It's a dead end thing. We've got to do something to get the local economy going, and we're in a prime place to do it. I think if we've got 39 living wage foundation employers in West Northants, that's not enough, but it's significant enough for us to promote it and to encourage other employers to do the same and more. The more people earn, the more money they've got in their pockets, the more they're going to spend, the more that we create that virtuous circle, don't we? And we've got to take it seriously to build the local economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Finally, we've got Councillor Beers with Sally.
Thank you, Chair. To say I was delighted with this report is putting it mildly, and the presentation we got as councillors from Sally Burns was exceptional. It really gives us a starting point, you know, a benchmark of where we can improve on, and I think that's so important with things. Some of the things in here, are quite hard to read to see what people are suffering in our communities. But I know that because we're aware of them now, and we can look at ways to help them is a huge way to work forward with this. I was just as one example, at 8.2 of our population, around 34,000 people aged 5 and over, provide some level of unpaid care to others weekly, compared with the 8.9 for across England. It's not as many, but it's still an awful lot, 34,000 people providing care for a loved one. And you have to remember that. Can I also congratulate them on the fact the welcome space, the warm welcoming spaces was a huge success. I went several in my ward and they were really welcome. It's not just warm spaces, it's social isolation that we've got to look at. People on their own, frightened to put their heating on, they've got somewhere to go, somewhere to have a cup of tea, have a chat, gets them out of the house. And that to me is a far better resource. And I really hope that next year that I know we're going through the summer, but I'm hoping next year we can build on that, because I think it's a huge way of actually helping people meet other people, like-minded people, and they might work then to go to voluntary groups. People, when they're lonely, they get very, very isolated and they just don't want to go out, and they can cause a lot of mental health issues. So I really think that's a major thing that we need to keep going. And as I say, the report is a good benchmark from where we are, where we've got to go. And I think a lot of things have been done already, which I'm pleased about. But anti-poverty has always been with us. You know, poverty has always been with us, you know, as from time starting. So we really have to try and help the most in need to make sure that we get to know them and actually help them. And the debt counselling service is excellent as well. So many, many good points. So thank you very much for all the hard work that's gone in from everybody, because I think this is a good way forward.
Very good. Thank you, Sally. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, it's a wonderful report and great to see the progress being made. Lots more to do, of course. Anybody want to add any further comments? Stuart, by all means.
Thank you, Chair. That was better. Just a couple of additional points, really. So I think, as Councillor Golby has articulated, we need to very much in the second year move not necessarily away from, but with an increased focus on those factors that will help us reduce the number of people in poverty in the first place. I think as part of that, whilst local people have benefited from the Household Support Fund, this year we have to reduce our reliance on that fund on the basis that we anticipate there's going to be around 5, but we need to work on the basis that there might not be around 6. I think when we look at our ability to reduce the number of people who are in poverty, what we need to start to do is better connect some of the wider work that we're doing, not just across a council, but across the wider health and social care system. So the activity that we're taking forward through our local area partnerships that's looking to reduce the number of children who are excluded or suspended from school will mean that we keep more children in school, which means they will have a higher level of attainment. The stuff that we're doing with our colleagues in the police around reducing youth offending will increase the opportunity for our children to achieve their aspirations going forward. I think when we think about our local economy, we need to move our anchor institutions work to a position whereby those big local employers are starting to provide practical contributions to the ambitions that we're committed to within the strategy. So there's a lot of work to do for us to take this forward in relation to year 2. I think there's something about us being really clear about the impact that we're going to have in relation to those KPIs that we set out in the original strategy. Some things we can make some immediate inroads against, but some things are going to take considerable years of time to erode some of the challenges that we currently face. But again, I really appreciate the comments that we've had tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. That's a really helpful comment about joining everything up and actually in it a reminder of some of the many other fantastic things that are going on in the whole area of social sustainability and so on. Any further comments at all from anybody? No, brilliant. Well, thanks again, Matt, for the introduction, for the marvellous report. Sorry. Yeah,
I'll be really quick.
Yeah, cool.
Just to go back on, I don't think Daniel said, sorry, Emma said about not doing enough. I think that we're always never going to be able to do enough. The real living wage challenge, I think, is a conversation that Emma needs to have with Mike. And just to reassure everybody that Cabinet do often have the conversation about the real living wage and what we're able to pay as a council, etc. Cabinet review pointer on the reports. I think that is something we have talked about it, and we need to get that in as a part of the template, I think, for Cabinet reports. Councillor Stone mentioned about collaboration being listened to. That's great. The local economy, I do think we've got to be careful about calling jobs dead-end jobs. And you know, we talk about Deliveroo, you could flip that over and say, well, we need an entry level into employment somewhere. And also people that are working Deliveroo are probably trying to do that to better themselves. And you know, all power to them for doing that. So there's two sides of looking at that. Sally's delighted, and the warm welcoming spaces comments are very good. Point around mental health is very important, because I think some very key data was taken from the warm welcoming spaces about people with mental health issues that we need to do something about. And just to finally finish, I didn't mention about the £2 million public health that's put into supporting the anti-poverty strategy over 3 years, details of which are in the report. And I look forward to getting right down into the detail through the laps, like Stuart says, to really make a difference within the communities, with our partners. But thank you for the comments, and back to you, Jim.
Yeah, brilliant. And sorry, Matt, I hadn't come back to you to sweep up some of those comments. Okay, brilliant. Recommendations, as always, for noting this report are at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement, please? Is that agreed? Jolly good. Thank you. Takes us on to item 17, which is with Malcolm, after which we have one speaker, which is Councillor Harris. Malcolm, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Well, this is I like to think it's a straightforward continuation of work already being undertaken. It's we're going to carry on buying our electricity through the laser program. And if you look at 5.1, you'll see that the comment there is laser was founded in '89 with a vision to help the public sector achieve the energy cost reductions made possible by newly deregulated gas and electricity markets. And it's all about a lot of counties getting together under Kent to buy electricity and gas in bulk, and so that you get the best price. That's what it's all about. We've been doing this for some years, and it's a continuation. Next year, this is what the report is seeking to get the agreement to. Now, Jonathan's going to come up in about 2 minutes. He's going to talk about the green agenda. I've absolutely no doubt, and so he should. And I refer you, Jonathan, to 5.3. In 2021, the Cabinet approved purchasing 100% renewable electricity and gas. This has been incorporated in the existing laser utilities contract. And I'm very keen to see that, and I'm sure everybody in this room is as well. So, Chair, that's about the size of this one, I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm. Jonathan, yes, over to you. See if Malcolm's prediction was correct.
Would I want to disappoint? It's a point related to the comment in 7.61, which is about the specific comment that says, in light of the Cabinet's decision in 2021 to purchase 100% green electricity and gas. The clarity I'm looking for is gas. The last time I looked, unless it's biomethane, isn't green. It's a fossil fuel. So it's clarity around whether we really are buying biomethane gas, or I suspect it's not. I suspect it's natural gas coming through the grid. So it's just a clarity point. I think we need to be careful what we say in our documents and our reports around emissions. Yes, it's cleaner than using coal, absolutely, but it's not 100% green. So that's a clarity and a correction if it isn't biomethane that I think we should make, just for the point of clarity. So I'm delighted to see that it says that, but I think we just need to be 100% correct. The final point is really around clearly the best or cheapest form of energy is the energy that we don't use. So I think it's just to make the point that although this is about acquisition of energy and procurement of energy, we mustn't lose focus around doing all that we can to limit the amount of energy that we actually use in the first place, because that's even better than the acquisition of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I
Thanks,
don't think anybody's any doubt that we're all of the same mind. Interesting little point of clarification. I don't know is the answer to that. Find out though. Thanks, Chair.
Does anyone else want to comment on that point or any other aspects? You look like you might be, Stuart. Did you want to?
I don't, but I believe we will find out the answer and make sure that Councillor Harris has that answer immediately tomorrow morning.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you ever so much. Any other comments at all? No? Okay. In which case, subject to that we'll clarify. Other than that, the recommendations are at section 3. Can I confirm, please, your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you. Takes us on to item 18. This is the housing acquisitions programme. This is with Adam. 2 speakers then, Councillor Purser, Councillor Beardsworth. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, from allocations to acquisitions. There's some subtleties here that members need to be aware of, mostly around the need to go to full council next week should Cabinet this evening decide to make the first of the recommendations under item 3 because of the cost of the capital programme and the change to the HRA budget. It requires authorisation from full council to make that change to budget. The budget is made of 3 separate government programmes to acquire housing for various cohorts. The first 2 are both under the heading of the Local Authority Housing Fund, LAHF, rounds 1 and 2. We had this at, I believe, the previous meeting with the decision having previously been taken as an urgent decision. The decision at the time was that we would try to obtain the 30 properties under LAHF 1 exclusively through our registered providers. To date, they've identified the majority of those properties, but they are struggling to identify the last few, which means that the funding allocated to us by government may be at risk, and we wouldn't be able to secure the total number of homes required under the scheme, and that in turn entails some risk for the council in that should Ukrainian or Afghan families become homeless in West Northamptonshire, we would still owe them a statutory responsibility to relieve that homelessness. So it's important that we do go ahead and procure all of these houses under both LAHF 1 and LAHF 2, which is the most recent iteration of the scheme, providing us with another £1.32 million in funding to acquire a further 10 properties. Between the 2 schemes, government is putting forward between 40 and 50% of the cost of a property. The rest has to be funded either by the registered provider that we're working with or by West Northamptonshire Council, hence the ask that we go back to the housing revenue account and use some of the capital funding that effectively was allocated to MPH schemes that have slipped slightly, and therefore the capital funding allocated this year won't be required this year, it will be required at a future date, but it all stacks up under the HRA budget. The third element is what's known as SHAP, the Permanent Under Secretary in charge of acronyms at DLUC has been hard at work, and this is effectively a reiteration of RSAP, the Rough Sleeper Accommodation Programme, but we're now looking to particularly support people who are suffering from entrenched homelessness and providing the wraparound support. Very similar indeed to RSAP. Again, that was providing both accommodation and the wraparound support. Crucially as well, it's important to note that we're also seeking some funding for to bring in I won't call them a consultant, but certainly a contractor to aid us in the procurement of properties and the renovation. So I think it's £250,000 that is earmarked for that. That includes both the procurement exercise and the renovation work, both capital and revenue elements of that work. The registered providers would undertake that work themselves, but with need falling back on WNC to complete that work, it means that it will be a pull on resources that we just don't have at this moment in time. The team are working extremely hard on a number of pressing issues, not least the housing allocations policy that we discussed earlier, as well as a number of other extremely important pieces of work around homelessness. So we do need that external capacity to come in and allow us to deliver these schemes. And again, I would reiterate that it's important that we do proceed with these, especially the LAHF schemes, because should Afghan and Ukrainian families become homeless, we do owe them that statutory duty to relieve that homelessness. Further to that, I think that the main benefit to residents of us proceeding with these schemes is that if and when Afghan and Ukrainian families move on to their own properties or to other parts of the country, we as a council retain nomination rights to those properties that we've acquired. So they would come back to form part of our housing stock or part of their housing stock with our registered provider within West Northamptonshire. And with that, happy to go to comments and questions.
Thanks, Adam. That's very helpful. So we've two speakers. Councillor Purser, first of all. Bob.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be brief. Welcome that we've participated in these schemes. I think we need to use every opportunity to bring houses in, recognise that we've got, particularly the Afghani community, have particular housing needs, and we need to be able to respond to that. It's very good that we are responding to that. Similarly with the Ukrainian community, it will actually take pressure off the other part of the housing list we've got. So I think we have to welcome this and make sure we make maximum use of every bit of funding that we get in whatever way we can do it. And I congratulate Councillor Brown and his grip on acronyms. Obviously necessary.
Thank you, Bob. That's great. Councillor Bidsworth. Sally, over to you.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, really. Are these properties we're buying, are they council stock that was? Are we buying them back into the system? What sort of houses are we buying? And is there any news on the place along the Welford Road that was subject to, there's been work carried out there recently. I don't know what's happened, but there's 40 houses out there that have been empty over a year, and they would be ideal social housing. I don't know if Adam knows anything about it. I think he does know something about it because I mentioned it last time. And it's just a shame that we haven't got rid of the right to buy, because that would save us a lot of houses. I'm hoping one day one government will get a grip with that and realise by selling off our council stock, it's not helping the homelessness situation. And if you won't be buying houses that already have people in them, like as tenants, like from landlords selling. That those people will be made homeless because the house is sold, and then you're putting another family in there. So I'm just wondering how you're going to go about finding these 25 houses. Are they going to be scattered across Northamptonshire, or what's your plan for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. You comment on a couple of those things.
Yeah, thank you to Councillor Purser for his comments. In terms of the nature of the housing that we are buying, it depends almost entirely on the opportunities within the market and what suitable properties are available. So we're working with some property developers to purchase houses that are close to completion in new developments, but we're also looking at other opportunities. It may or it may not include former council house stock. Funnily enough, Councillor Beardsworth, I predicted before the meeting that you would walk up to that desk and talk about the right to buy, and you haven't disappointed. So we broadly agree on that. In terms of the Welford Road housing, I've been working with Councillor Reemans in Kingsthorpe North for an awful long time on this. There are immense complications around the Section 278 agreement on the site, and financial failures on the part of subcontractors that were due to complete key works on that site. So we continue to work with Futures Housing, who are leading on that site, and we'll bring it through as soon as possible. But I know that Stuart Timmis is doing a piece of work on Section 278 in the round because it's causing a few problems elsewhere in the district. So it's a known issue. We're working on it, but there are particular problems that are outside of our control on that side. But it is a shame because it's immensely frustrating to see any housing sit vacant, let alone new builds.
Jolly good. Thank you, Adam. Any further comments at all? No. Okay, excellent. You'll note that the timing of this is the reason why we've had to squeeze in the extraordinary council meeting next week in order to hit deadlines, express interest and so on. As a consequence to which the first recommendation is we recommend this to Cabinet. Recommendations are at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement? Agreed? That's great. Thank you very much. Takes us on to 19. This again is with Adam. It's the HIMO Working Group report. After Adam's introduction, 4 speakers, Councillors Purser, Stone, Roberts and Beardsworth. Adam, over to you. You're okay, Sally. Thank you very much. That's very. Oh, Emma's just okay. That's great. Over to you, Adam.
Firstly, Chairman, to thank all of the officers and my fellow councillors on the working group who've helped bring this report through to this stage. It's been a lengthy but thorough process, I believe, and it's been thoroughly educational along the way. HMOs are a very complex area. It crisscrosses the regimes of planning and licensing. And as we heard from residents, over concentration of HMOs come with a whole plethora of issues for settled communities in those areas. What the recommendations seek to do in the immediate term is to alleviate the most pressing issues within those communities by focusing resources more closely on known HMO hotspots, focusing particularly on fly tipping, littering, antisocial behaviour. But we're also looking at a more stringent form of licensing regime, increasing demands for landlords to put in place suitable means of rubbish disposal and other measures similar to that. And we're also looking longer term at what we can do in terms of planning when we come to consider the West Northants local plan. Most of the measures set out under the list of recommendations, under the action plan within the report, will be implemented by the autumn. There are some that run into the new year because we're waiting for certain policies to expire and naturally come up to their review. What I would add, just as a caveat, is that it was never and it could never be the intention of this piece of work to end HMOs altogether. They have a place in the housing market. The well-run HMOs are not problematic. And actually, I think one of the most helpful contributions that we had from a third party during the course of the working group was from one of the more reputable landlords that we know in the local area, who identified that the present Article 4 direction in Northampton does seem to be having the desired effect. They now deem Abington and other areas in the centre of Northampton as not areas that they could consider to create a new HMO because it's so close to the limits imposed by that Article 4 direction, which of course Northampton Borough Council brought into effect several years ago. We are seeking to continue and potentially expand the enhanced licensing regime that's in place in Northampton. We'd welcome at the appropriate time comments on whether that should be extended into other parts of West Northamptonshire. But all in all, I do think that this represents good progress on the issue, and I hope that it will give residents in Abington, Semilong, Farcotton and other places some confidence that we recognise the issues and that we're going to get to grips with them. We certainly recognise the need for greater enforcement and suitable action taken against rogue private sector landlords. That the private sector housing enforcement team are already doing fantastic work on that front. Fines of up to £400,000 or so being levied against the worst landlords. And we look forward to more of that work coming to fruition in the months and years ahead. But happy to take comments and questions.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Adam. That's really helpful. So 2 speakers. First of all, Councillor Purser. Bob.
Thank you, Chair. As the member who brought the original motion to council, this was all of council supported this. I think this is a work that's been across party and has been another good piece of collaborative work. So I think that's very welcome. I think it's taken us a long while to get the work done. I was hoping that we might do it in maybe 9 months. It's taken almost double that. So I think we need to look at how we can, if we identify a problem, how we expedite that through the system. And of course, this is only the beginning of the process. We've now got to take the action that will bring it. I think it's very important for some areas in our town. It's important for some of our terrace streets, but also for some of the areas to the east of town, which were former social housing that have been brought in, and that it is having an impact. And we need to take forward not only the action plan we're talking here, but the joined up working to deal with the litter and the bins and those sorts of issues. So we've got to continue to work on it. My area, I've got a application for a HIMO that is increasing the number of beds in one building from 9 to 19 in a single building. That's coming before planning officers to look at. And you know, that causes huge impact on a local community. So we will continue as members to be vigilant on this and support residents with their concerns. Serious cases have come to light as we've gone along, and I welcome the enforcement action that's been taken. That's got to continue, and that team needs the strength in terms of officer and capacity to really act swiftly where problems are brought to light and get things through the court system as quickly as possible where we need to prosecute. So I welcome the action plan, but we actually got to start the action now. We've done the talking, we've got to move to action.
Jolly good. Thank you, Bob, for your comments. Then Councillor Stone, Danielle.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, in the area that I represent, HIMOs have been a huge problem for a very long time. So I really welcome more enforcement being put in. I think it's really, really important. But I think over time, we need to go way beyond that, because I think we need to have a vision of how we want our communities to be. And we say all the time, we want them to be balanced and cohesive. So what I see in Castle is a lack of balance and a lack of cohesion. And that's the bit that really bothers me. So, you know, we know that students live in HIMOs. I don't know why that's acceptable, but that's part of our tradition. That's fine. We shouldn't have families living in HIMOs, should we? We should not have children living in HIMOs. Those are safeguarding issues, it seems to me. And, you know, we're suffering extreme weather events. And I know that in a lot of HIMOs, extreme heat is extremely difficult to deal with. Where are people supposed to go? COVID was another issue, wasn't it? Where are people supposed to go to keep safe? There's lots and lots of issues. But the biggest one for me is the way that the numbers of HIMOs, so I'm not objecting to having any HIMOs, but it's the number, isn't it, has led to a hollowing out of our communities, because it's caused a flight of families from lots of different neighbourhoods. And they were the families that were the kind of neighbourly people that kept they were the glue that kept the community together. And it's terrible for me seeing the flight of those families. But the other issue is we have very, very few large houses for large families, for families with intergenerational members. I went to visit an area canvassing the other day, beautiful 2 5-bedroom council houses in the Eastern District. One with a big family, an intergenerational family, brilliant. The other one was a HIMO. I really object to that, you know. I really, really object to that. I have got families living with the children sleeping in bathrooms, with the parents sleeping in living rooms, where they can't have their old mum come to stay with them. All of these things going on in Castle, huge housing pressures. And what we need to be doing is giving our planning officers many more tools to deal with that situation so that we can do what we say in the corporate plan and have balanced and cohesive communities. So I welcome the report. I think it took far too long to come before us. I recognise all the work that's been done, but I think, Councillor Brown, there's still a lot more to do.
Thank you for your comments, Danielle. Did you want to come back on any of those at all, Adam?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Completely agree with Councillor Pearce's comments about the need for joined up working. I think the report does go a long way to addressing that. On the specific example of the application for the HIMO in his ward, I do see a lot of the comments online about such and such an application has come forward. Why are the council even considering this? Planning law says we have to consider it, and it will be considered on its merits. And you know, if the evidence and the policy supports a refusal of planning permission, then planning permission will be refused. We should have confidence in the planning regime to do that. And you know, we heard from the representatives from the student landlords that they find it now almost impossible to acquire new HMO type properties in Abington and similar areas. So I think the policy is working to a large degree. That's not to deny the existence of unlicensed black market type HMOs, which is where the enforcement regime comes in, and you know, we're very, very keen to crack on and clamp down on that. I acknowledge the length of time that it's taken, but I would just say that you know, this has been a huge effort on the part of all of the officers involved. They've been doing this in addition to their other duties, their day job, everything else that needs to be done to keep their departments running. So that's been part of it. Yes, I think Councillor Stone makes a good suggestion about maybe we can review ways of better facilitating working groups of this sort in the future, but I never wanted this to be a rush job. I never wanted this to be a knee-jerk reaction to the demonstration of concern that we saw on the steps of the Guildhall. It needed to be a thorough piece of work, and I think that's what we've delivered. And actually, I think it's indicative that one of the publications in the private landlord trade press described this as a root and branch HMO crackdown. So clearly, in the views of private landlords, we're going quite far with the recommendations in this report. We had comments along the lines of why do students live in HIMOs? I lived in what would be classified as an HMO as a student. It's, you know, you do it, it's fun. It's, you know, it saves you an awful lot of money. It's, and you know, that's the nub of the issue. You know, we do not have housing stock that is either affordable or plentiful enough to provide everybody with an individual home of their own. And that's before you get to the fact that some people don't want a home of their own. They want that shared living accommodation with people for whatever reasons that they may have. And we really shouldn't go down the path of forcing people into potential isolation, actually, if we say to them that you can't be in shared accommodation, you must have a one-bedroom flat to meet your needs. But actually, ironically enough, I think when we see ward councillors objecting to the building of one-bedroom flats in their ward, that perpetuates the need for HMOs, and more open-mindedness, more acceptance of that sort of accommodation by ward councillors would go a long way to easing the pressure on the HMO market and easing the demand that we see at the moment. From the information I have, children in HMOs is not a widespread issue. It's not something we support. We'd be very concerned if that was the case. So if any councillors ever come across examples of children living in HMOs, the private sector housing enforcement team would like to know about it, and we will investigate that because it comes with clear safeguarding concerns. I think that caps things off, Chairman.
Chairman, good. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for your comments. Does anybody have any further comments? Rebecca?
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at this excellent piece of work, and you've got to consider there are two sides, there's the planning side and there's the regulatory side. And the planning side is actually harder to resolve because, as we know through bitter experience with other policies, it's very difficult. You cannot write new policy. You can only drill down into the policies you have and try and explain them better. So on the regulatory side, I'll draw members' attention to 6.d of this, which seeks to boost the enforcement activity with the business plan being developed for having more enforcement staff. So that's on the regulatory side, something which is coming out of this. And on the planning side, as we develop our local plan, that's the time to look at HMO policies and see if they're still applicable and those that need to be changed. And of course, HMOs will apply to the wider area of West Northampton, not just Northampton. But in speaking up for HMOs, they are an important part of the housing mix, because the social local housing allowance for under 35 single people only provide in Northampton area £85 a week, which does not support anything other than a IMO if you're in a low income job. But also for young professionals, I know that HMOs are important, for example, around hospitals and providing fairly accessible accommodation, but they need to be good quality. And we do need to have on offer good quality HMOs that young doctors, nurses, allied staff can go and work in for a short period of time and move freely between. So we need to encourage good quality HMOs in the right place. And we also need to look at HMO policy in our coming local plan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Any further comments at all? No. Okay, good. As always, the recommendations on this, we thank everybody for the work on this, the group itself, the officers who have supported it, and so on. And then the recommendations are at section 3, which is about approving the action plan for implementation. Can I ask you to confirm your agreement, please? Is that agreed? Jolly good. Thank you very much indeed. Takes us on to effectively our last item, which is disposal of areas of land. Now, just to agree this, there is a pink paper here. It's very modest, just has a number written on it. But if we were to discuss that, we would need to go into private session. Sorry, Fiona, are we going to comment on the paper that's coming up? Okay. Right, so we've got an interest there. We can deal with that in a second. Just on the general topic, we don't like to go into private session any more than we need to. We have no press or media to ask, no press or public to leave, but we would suspend the streaming. And generally, that's not good policy. We prefer not to. Is everybody happy that we remain in public session? But that would require you not to refer to the number that's on the pink paper. Is that okay? Should we stay in public? Fantastic. Okay, that's great. In a moment, we'll hand over to Malcolm just to introduce this. In terms of your interest, it just means you don't participate, or you won't leave the room. You just won't participate in the discussion on that. And have we then got a mistake on how we're describing the piece of land? Oh, the rest is okay, is it? Yeah. The rest of the report is correct. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, okay, well, that's noted. Thank you very much. In which case, we'll hand over to Malcolm. We've got one speaker after Malcolm, which is Councillor Purser. Malcolm, over to you.
Right, thanks for that, Fiona, being a local that have been very much involved with this. Well, there are 3 little stories here, as you've probably all seen. I'd like to think they're all good stories. The first one is the Beckett's Park Pavilion, and that's been a reasonable state, but it needs some work, which is currently being carried out. But there's now been an arrangement struck between a private cafeteria and a voluntary organisation, which seems to fit rather well, because well, it'll put the pavilion in good use and will help maintain it in the longer term, but also keeps the voluntary sector. They do things like, as I understand it, egg hunts at Easter and things like that, and they do some looking after the park. So everybody's pretty happy about this. So that's the first one. I hope everybody's in line with that. The second one on here is the Delapre Abbey, and it's there's a building in the stable yard, and if we don't do anything here, it'll deteriorate. And so the best opportunity, we believe, and everybody does, is to lease it to the Delapre Abbey Preservation Trust. And this asks for, there's an agreement for lease, and it's asked for the officers to be able to adjust that timing as appropriate. But the objective is to hand over this to the Delapre Avenue, so Abbey, so that they'll look after it in a meaningful and long-term basis. And so I think that's a good one. And the final one is, of course, is in Brackley, as you've probably already heard. And this is all about leasing a piece of land to the town council, and it's effectively free. And the objective is to locate a skate park and a youth community building. So I'd like to think there's three good stories. They're not financially significant, but they are really part of a tidying up exercise, because in each one of them, we can't just do nothing. So we think these are three good solutions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Further interest, Adam's going to declare interest as a trustee of Delapre.
Yes, already declared on my register of members' interests, but
Indeed,
just to confirm.
An appointment through the council. But quite right to have done that. Thank you. Okay. In which case, then we have one speaker, which is Bob, is already in place. Well done, Bob.
Yeah, I'm endeavouring to not keep people from their bedtimes, really. Yes, I agree. Three good news stories. The one point I was just wanting to make was with regard to the situation in Brackley. I know that the skate park, which is a really good project, is also next to a site that the town council has been looking to for youth provision, but is being priced out of the market. And I think as a council, we have a difficult decisions to make about when commercial interests butt up against community interests and how we negotiate those particular conflicts. And I know people in Brackley wanted that to be brought to the cabinet this evening, for that to be aired, that they see a site that was traditionally a sports centre there for community use. That's now moved, but that site is now seen as a sort of an opportunity to maximise sort of capital receipts. And so there are people who are not happy about that. So I just thought that ought to be reflected. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. You're quite correct. And that's been a tussle now for 12, 18 months, a long time, been a long time coming. And what we think, we believe we got the right balance, or as good as it's going to get, shall I say. The alternative has been rolling on and on and on. And we've got to look after the council's money, obviously, but equally get the provision as you just suggested. And our belief is we've got the balance as good as it's going to get. That's why we've done it.
Jolly good. Thank you. Any other comments on these at all? Phil?
Just to say, Chair, as you and Mike know, the situation with the Beckett's Park situation has been going on for years, and I'm delighted to see it at long last resolved. I think buddies of Beckett's have been after that for a long time. They do a fantastic job in the park, and I think they'll certainly welcome this, and I think I'm pleased to be part of an authority that's provided that facility for them.
Thanks, Phil. I'd agree with that. I remember it was some time ago back in the borough we're talking, then I think partly COVID, partly unitary, and goodness knows what, put it back. So it's great to see it happen. And indeed, the stables move ahead at Delapre, we've known for some time that was the next phase, but to see it brought back to potentially use, perhaps some commercial usage, so would be absolutely fantastic. Any further comments on this one at all? In which case, as always, I think the recommendations are at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement to those recommendations? Is that agreed? Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you to everybody who attended, those who prepared the reports and so on. And it's still Tuesday. Thank you very much.